Young men speaking in the city square, trying to tell somebody that he cares. Can you blame the voice of youth for asking what is true? Yeah, the ones that you're calling wild are gonna be the leaders in a little while. When will the lonely voice of youth cry, what is true? This our world's waking to a newborn babe, and I solemnly swear it'll be their way. You better help that voice of youth find what is true. And the lonely voice of youth cries, what is true?
All right, he says, hurriedly putting on his hat, which he somehow forgot to do. Uh, it's going to be fun. I have no notes. Well, almost no notes. I have some notes, but I have special treats. Obviously, the lighting's a little bit different, so we're experimenting with lighting. Let me know how it works. Because I don't know, just playing around, trying new things, trying to get this stuff to do new fun things. And look, I got my Sam Pell, right? Hopefully, hopefully you have yours. And I've got my Muppet cup. And have you considered? Have you? Because and I do have some tea, but it's medicinal tea and it's steeping with a cover. So I ain't showing it to you. That's how that works. Yeah, and I took almost no notes because we're talking about signals, and this is something I feel like, yeah, I shouldn't need much in the way of notes, but I also have a special treat because what we're gonna do is I'm gonna show you some stuff that actually happened earlier today. Like, unbelievable, Mark, unbelievable. How do you pick these things? And then after you pick them, events come up. I don't know. I got nothing. Um, but yeah, I mean, obviously, it's a it's a rough week for some people, right? We've got this USAID, right? And what's USAID? It's an example of complexity collapse, right? Which I talked about on my personal channel. Actually, was that today? I think I posted that today. I can't remember anymore. I've been sick. Man, I had that sore throat thing, and then I had a stomach thing, and I got almost nothing done this week, so I'm way behind. I did manage to squeeze out a video, so that was good. But, we're seeing all this chaos everywhere, like everywhere. And USAID gets threatened to be defunded, right? Defunding takes time, it's not an instantaneous process. And then all of a sudden, all of these organizations are laying people off and they're in a panic. And it's like, it's not even that much money. What's going on? Oh, that was supporting your whole organization or 50% of it or more. Oh. So basically, you're a propaganda arm. Lovely. And then people are freaking out because they're like, how did this happen so quickly? That's how complexity collapses. Right. And, how bad is the system? Well, it's so bad that you can just reduce its budget a little bit by a relatively small amount of total dollars. And because it's based on that one thing, it's gone. Right. And like, what about Hollywood? I mean, Hollywood's been experiencing the same sort of collapse. Um, and that's the problem. It's the same collapse. Hollywood's collapse seems to be due to just the I want to call it the paucity of the product that they're putting out. Give me one sec, guys. I'm just gonna try something real quick. There. Hopefully that's better, Don. You can let me know. Um, right, like you put out bad product for long enough, and then eventually the system collapses, right? Because the momentum of the system can't hold. Right. And the thing is, like Gamergate, I've said this before, Gamergate had it all. I mean, I looked on Sargon Avocad's website. I can't find anything old. But he had in 2014 or 2015, he had a whole playlist on Gamergate and what it really was and what really happened. And he said, "This is coming for you. You may think it's just us gamers." And look, back then I was like, "Eh, gamers, losers, sounds the same." Like I'm not. I was never a big gamer. Not that I wasn't very good at Quake World 244 because I was really good at that game. But like, I didn't play hours of WoW. Not that I didn't play WoW. I played my WoW. I like Dark Ages of Camelot a lot better. Long story. Um, but like, I was like, man, you guys spend too much time playing games. I had a lot of time. I only slept 4 hours a night. I could care less. I had an extra 4 hours in the day to blow on gaming. Didn't bother me at all, but I was pretty disciplined about it. Um, but he was right. Like, oh no, it's not just the gamers. It came for everybody. And it did come for everybody. And that's where we are. And it's not going to get better immediately. And all these people, politics is downstream of culture, but now politics is fixed, so everything's fine. No, 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 no punishment, no scapegoat, no sacrifice, no bueno. How's that? Right, right. And then what do we see? We see a bunch of people sort of pining, right? I mean, a lot of the internet is pining for conversations. Uh, Conversations make things worse in all cases for some reason, past a certain point, we'll say, right? So no conversation is, you know, doable, but maybe not optimal, but certainly doable. Been done, it's not a problem. Like not discussing things that actually can work out fine. And then we've got this outbreak of the internet, and everybody wants to talk things through so they can avoid actually doing anything. That's what it is. Well, I don't want to have to do anything. I just want to talk about it. And then maybe I'll know what to do. And then I'll definitely do it. Sure, for sure. Once we work it out to my satisfaction, it turns out you're never satisfied, by the way. It'll be fine, right? And that's the signal people are sending. And they want these signals. They want propositional signals. That's what they want. They want the signal that tells them that how to be right, what's right, and why it's right, so that they can justify it and validate it to themselves. Like I get it. Also not gonna happen. And so for me, people are like, "Oh, I had no way to have these conversations, and now I can have them online." And I'm like, "Yeah, we had open parlor night once a month or whatever. I think it was Wednesday nights. Um, so I'm like used to this. I'm like, why is this a big deal? And why are you doing it online? We did it in person around food, and you know, there were no fights, but like threat of violence is always there because people, you know. So to me, I'm like, I don't know why this is important to you. You're all lunatics. Because they're lunatics. But might be it. And the thing is, these are signals, right? Oh, I want propositional signals because they're clear to me, which they're not. Like if you prefer propositions, you're a fundamentalist, or you will become one immediately. Because if what you got are words, bro, it's hard because all this interpretation involved, and then that's it. It becomes dogmatic automatically. Dogma is not a church thing. It's a state of the world thing that humans can adopt. Like, you got to be careful about becoming dogmatic. You can't do away with dogma, right? You probably need some help with that, by the way. That'll help you if you don't. If you have like a church or whatever, just saying. And then these signals are important to us because, for example, money indicates seriousness. Right? Money is a signal. How serious are you? How much money are you willing to put up? What's your bet, bro? That's that's serious. Like, yeah, what is your bet? How much money are you willing to put up? Right? Because what's money? To some extent, at least as near as we can tell from the outside, it's a proxy for your time, energy, and attention. So if you're willing to put up a proxy for your time, energy, and attention on something, like BBC reporting in the UK, even though you're an American and it's your tax dollars and you don't know anything about it and can't watch the BBC. That might be a hint as to why it's evil, by the way, just in case you're curious. Um, well, it must be pretty serious. This must be important. Must be an important message they want to send. Now, we don't have to get specific about the message, right? And this is usually where the incompetence comes in, right? Because you can let people assume things. So that seriousness is conveyed by the money. But what's not conveyed by the money necessarily, and this is usually where people waste money, is what it is you actually want. Ah. So when I bought my Beamer, I basically, walked into the dealership because I had money back then. I didn't care. I was like, I want a blue 230i convertible. And he was like, this color or that color. And I'm like, because they had 2 shades of blue. And I'm like, bro, just get me a blue freaking convertible. Like, I'm not having this discussion. I'm too important for these menial decisions. So of course you have to take a test drive. It's manual. Fine. Mandatory test drive. I'll take a test drive. Took a test drive. Get back. Gets me the light blue car. Now, had there been a dark blue car, I think I would have preferred that. But also, I was just like, here's my money. Get me my blue car. I wasn't specific enough. Which one I preferred. And what he did, to be fair, is he was actually a really good salesman. He looked up what I had looked up online, right? Not really understanding that I don't actually look things up in order of preference. There are reasons for this, and they're too boring to go into and numerous to go into. But I don't look things up according to preference. So I knew I wanted a blue car. I looked at the light blue one first for reasons. Has to do with expectation and disappointment and stoic training and aestheticism, by the way. So he picked the light blue one automatically. Now I'm not sad at all that I have a light blue car. It's kind of cool. I get complete shit from my best friend, of course, and a few other people, which is fine. It's fine. Like I enjoy it. But like, yeah, it's yeah. Yeah, it's a does that car come in men's sort of comment, which is fine. I think it's hysterical. Totally on me. The proxy of money did not convey my preferences. He inferred my preferences from my search, which was unreliable. My fault. Totally my fault. I don't even care that much. I'm like, it's blue. We're fine. Like, blue is the only real color. Everybody knows this. So that signal wasn't there for him to get which blue. So he figured out a signal to latch onto. And I'm not sad about it, right? Like, I'm not, whatever. I don't care. That's how signals work. If they're not there, you can add them in. Right? And the thing about money is, if enough money is involved, it has a normative quality to it. I don't like the word normative particularly, but it moves the needle. It moves the engagement. It moves groups of people. And that creates an illusion of normativity or tribe, where in fact there may not be one, in fact, right? Like, that happens all the time. This is the entire Democratic Party in the US, by the way. So they have no unifying anything. They don't have unifying principles, they don't have unifying virtues, they don't have any unifying ideas or goals or purposes, or, occasionally they agree on a few of those things, but they don't actually unify around any of them. They're unified around an identification against. We're just not the Republicans who are ordered and conservative and busy working, right? We're not those people, right? Yeah, yes, you're certainly not. That idea that they're a tribe breaks apart when things become too contentious. But the signal that the Democrats exist is now broken. It's gone. People posting all over the place, like, the Democratic Party is over. Yeah, it kind of is. It kind of was a long time ago. You didn't notice because it was a normative order brought in by money, mainly by Hillary Clinton, and that momentum kept going because it takes a while to break momentum. I will get into more of that over time. But this is the problem with money. It can give you the illusion of a normative quality or a tribe when none exists. And it's actually extremely common, right? And what we've seen is manipulation doesn't last forever, right? Just a lot longer than you realize, right? Especially if you don't understand hierarchy, right? Scale, up and down, right? Left and right scale. There's two types of scale, up and down, and left and right. Momentum, right? If something's moving, it's not just going to stop, right? And you can say, "Oh, but U.S. aid." No, no, no. All the movement from U.S. aid was caused by the money. So when you stop the money, it's if you've ever like been in the water, like if you stop a wave prematurely, there's an undercurrent that goes backwards, right? So that's what happened with USAID. That's why it went that way. May not be the only reason, but that's the primary reason why it went that way. It's just momentum and the effects of momentum because you're not linear. They don't scale that way, right? Mimicry is another factor you kind of have to understand to understand. Like you mimic signals, you do. You also will insert signals where they don't exist. I'm going to demonstrate that, by the way, later. also, super important, right? You have to understand sacrifice. Not just scapegoating, that's a form of sacrifice, but you have to understand sacrifice. Individuals, if you want to hear the individualism, you will hear the individualism when people talk about sacrifice only in terms of themselves. And this is why Girard's so interesting, right? Girard's interesting to people because he talks about the scapegoat, which is you or a group of people sacrificing somebody outside the group. And this is so new to people because they're such narcissistic individualists. They're like, oh, wow, that's really important. It's just a form of sacrifice, guys. Like maybe it's scaled up and you haven't been paying attention to scale, which I listed earlier, by the way. Interesting, huh? And so it's super important. And then the more important thing, as Jonathan Peugeot said, what is the world? Attention. Attention. You have to understand attention. Signals both get our attention and pull our attention away. Oh, isn't that inconvenient? And if we have too much attention, we'll insert signals where they aren't. And again, I'm going to show you that, actually. I'm going to show you all of this. I think it'll work. I mean, I might be wrong. This is like experimental pirate stream. Like this, we're going to go nuts today. Absolutely nuts. It's not just lighting. You have to understand cognitive overload and maybe the broader topic of cognition, which I know at some point I'll have to cover it, right? I'm covering it in bits and pieces because it's too many freaking concepts to get people to understand, right? Attention, awareness, relevance, realization, right? The limits of your cognition, your memory, like all this stuff is wrapped into cognition. It's a very big topic. But cognitive overload, of course, I have a video of that on here on Navigating Patterns, right? Elsewhere, it's a good video, right? I've talked about this before. This is important. And then filtering, which is the thing that prevents cognitive overload. And not everybody has the same set of filters or needs the same set of filters. And yeah, oh, wow, that gets complicated fast, right? And orientation, right? What is your orientation? I should know John Vervaeke's using the word orientation. Of course, he has no idea what he's talking about, like none at all. He's just using the word because I use the word apparently and whatever. He doesn't have a sense for it. And he's using it in a relativistic way. And it's like, no, orientation doesn't work in relativism at all. Orientation is the thing that fights relativism. And you don't have to know where you are. You can be lost in the desert or the wilderness or whatever. That's fine. But you do need an orienting point. Like otherwise you can't orient and orientation is irrelevant. Just do direction all day. So these are all important concepts to understand signals, right? Signals look different from different parts of the hierarchy. The signal from the top is stronger than the signal from the bottom in some ways, not in every way, right? Like The guy next to you looks a little sketchy. You better pay a lot more attention to him than whoever's at the top telling you to do something, right? Like these things happen. I get that. But also, there used to be a commercial, right? When E.F. Hutton speaks, people listen. It's a great commercial. I really miss some of the old commercials. Um, that's actually important. The same signal coming from a different part of the hierarchy has a different impact and a different spread, right? Like, obviously, if Jordan Peterson puts something on his channel, right, it reaches more people. That's part of hierarchy. It's not all of hierarchy. It's part of hierarchy, right? And we can debate the ways he got there and whether or not you can copy him and all that nonsense. It's waste of your time, by the way, because you're not him. The way he got there isn't necessarily the way you can get there. All the tactics he used may not work anymore, by the by. And that's the thing. Scale. Scale affects signal. Because scale talks about the spread of the signal. It talks about the strength of the signal through wherever it's going to. So at the scale of one individual, you shouting at the moon doesn't do anything, right? You shouting at a room full of dignitaries probably won't do anything unless you shout fire, right? See how signals are tricky? If you shout fire, people pay attention to you. May not be the right attention and you might get in trouble, but right. Scale matters. Right? If you want to send a very clear, precise message to a bunch of people, once that bunch of people gets too large, say to 100, your message precision goes down to the group. Same message, right? But the precision goes down because the sample size is larger because the scale has changed. In a small group that you know well, you can pretty much get it close enough that it doesn't matter. But in a large group, you can't do that even if you know them well. That's how scale affects signals. Momentum. Doppler effect. Some signals come late. Right. Some signals come early. Right? So JFK starts talking about what he's going to do if he gets nominated, if he gets into the spot, right? For the FDA, I think it is, right? And then what happens before he can even start hearings as to whether or not he's going to be part of the government in any way, shape, or form ever in his entire life? The FDA abouts face on a bunch of things. He's not even in office. What's going on? Signals come first. They carry the power. In some cases, not in all cases, right? So that's good to know. There's a momentum to signals, and sometimes it lags, and sometimes it's out in front. Sorry, it's just the way it is. Mimicry. What are we mimicking? We're mimicking the signals we think we see. Sometimes we're crazy. Sally Joe. And we are seeing signals that aren't there. Like, well, I really should get a Twitter account. These things happen. Sorry, Sally, had to call you out. It's also one of our favorite things to laugh about. So it's such a stark. You should not get a Twitter account over and over again. What does she do? She gets a Twitter account right then and there. It's like, what did you do? Sacrifice. Sacrifice sends a strong signal, right? It also teaches people certain lessons, right? Your willingness to sacrifice, your ability to sacrifice, you sacrificing teaches people discipline to wait, teaches them trade-offs, teaches them future matters. It privileges sacrifice, generally privileges the future over the present. Shouldn't do that all the time, but sometimes you should. And if you never see it, you won't be able to discern when you should and when you shouldn't. You know anybody like that? because I sure as hell do. Attention. Where you put your attention signals to other people, and where other people put their attention signals to you. This doesn't work particularly well with me, by the way, but most people pay better attention. Could be a sign of autism, but I actually don't think so. Long story. Read Mind Blindness by Simon Baron Cohen. Great set of essays on autism. Awareness. Awareness is the field where signals can catch your attention. People might call it salient landscape, whatever. I'm fine with the term. I just think awareness is easier and people know what it is. Salient landscape could be too fancy and jargony. I still use salient landscape, don't get me wrong, but also not in mixed company, we'll say. You're not ever going to be aware of all signals. So the field of awareness that you have is the thing that puts you in touch with, we'll say, hopefully the most important signals for where you're at. And that's a good thing. I mean, like attention and like focus, you need to tune your awareness. You need to tune it. And this brings us to cognitive overload. Cognitive overload is too much signal followed by no signal. And the thing is, because there's no signal, you go a little bit crazy in the moment. This is when people are overwhelmed with facts, and then you're telling them about a contradiction, and they're not reading a contradiction. That's because they're cognitively overloaded. They had too much signal, they couldn't process it. And now they're broken for a while. The buffer's got to clear, or however you want to say it. Right? That happens. That's why signals are super important. Filtering. You know, this is off. It's filtered. I can't really pay too much attention to it because it's off. Right? Electronics usually come with their own filtering, and they're good for filtering. And you can use email filters and notification filters and timers and all kinds of things to move your attention. I use one of my timers for tea all the time. Right? So filters are important. We need them. They're good things. Orientation. Your orientation affects your awareness, and it affects your attention. What signals can you see? What signals are available to you? And what signals are excluded? Because sometimes you just need to exclude some damn signals because they're no good. I don't really care about the daily report from Israel or Ukraine or almost all of Europe, any of Africa. I almost never pay attention to news out of the continent of Africa and its various countries. Sorry. I'm oriented away from those things and towards what I'm working on here in South Carolina. And a little bit oriented, up the East Coast to the Boston area where friends and family. Orientation matters, especially to signals. And the thing is, signals are important too because sometimes you get a signal that doesn't drive with the source. And that's actually really important, right? Because signals aren't out there in a vacuum. We tend to treat everything as though it's in a vacuum because we're individualistic. We're stuck in objectivist mode, right? We're stuck in that OMR, objective material reality sort of thing, where it's just us and we can pick one thing like signals. And it's like, bro, you can't do that. You can't treat signals like objects apart from the world. They're embedded in everything else. And once you understand that, you can say, all right, what if we're getting a good signal, you know, hey, come over here, man, check this out. But they're sketchy looking people. Yeah, well, maybe, why are serial killers and child molesters dressing up like clowns? Literally. Huh. Right. The signal doesn't jive with the source. I mean, it's one way to tell, we'll say, a bad signal from a good signal. And the thing is, signals affect us all the time without us being aware. We'll say consciously. Unconsciously, you're being manipulated all the time by signals. It happens. You know what signals you're responding to? Look at the PVK crew. They're talking about King Arthur. Why? Because Great Tales did King Arthur. That's why. Did they know that? Nah. No. We're not beholden to those symbolic world folks. They're going to come to our Midwestuary. Boy, I hope not. Although some of the symbolic world people are a little woohoo. They don't know where they're getting this stuff from. It's in the zeitgeist, so they're just kind of picking up on the bull crap. You're mimicking a signal. You just don't realize it. You don't want to admit it because that would make you submit it to something that you don't understand, which you are necessarily anyway. I don't know. Just give up on that. But they won't. And the thing is, they deny their starting point. They deny the thing they have in common. And what signal is that sending? Oh no, we're not. Peterson, we don't agree with Peterson. Peterson had nothing to do with this. And then almost every rando story. How'd you get here, Peterson? A little weird. And then if they don't hear a signal, what do? So we're going to try my little experiment. There's a guy over there called Mark D. Parker. And Mark came on the scene, and I guess I don't know what happened. I don't pay any attention to this guy at all. The only reason why I know about him is because he's on Jacob's stream, and people were like, they thought Mark D. Parker was you. And I'm like, I don't know who Mark D. Parker is, and why do I care? Right? Because I don't care. What does this have to do with me? And so there's been this thing about, which Mark is the mean Mark, or which Mark is the real Mark, or whatever. I don't know. I don't know what they do over there. They do strange things. And at one time, you reached out to me on, I think, the Randos United stream, which I try to check for comments. I don't know how good a job I do, but I check when I remember. I do check the numbers a little bit just to see what's going on. And he said, Mark, do you want to talk to me? And I'm like, about what? Why? Who are you? Like, I don't know who you are. Like, other than seeing you on Jacob's stream for a few minutes, a couple times, and whatnot. I don't know who you are. Why do I want to talk to you? There's like 9 billion people on the planet. Why you? Right? Like, you're not on my Discord server. Like, you're not reaching out to me. You're not, I don't understand where this comes from. Like, why would I want to talk to you? And that's the thing. That's my total engagement with this guy. And I mean, I'm sure he says stuff. I probably hear some of it, but honestly, like, whatever. A lot of people say a lot of things, and I get a lot of filters on. So I don't pay a huge amount of attention. And I am in the live stream comments. I found PVK's Friday live streams to just like help me a lot with these for some weird reason. When they're on, they're not on every week. But and I would have been fine without this. But my goodness, let's have a look, shall we? This just honestly, this just completely blew my mind. I was like totally blown away by this. Now, before this, there's no mention of me. I'm in the live comments, making comments, noting things, saying what's going on here, guys, right? Because they're doing their usual weird estuarial thing or whatever the hell it's called this week. And out of nowhere, this is what I hear.
No, the writer you were talking about was addressing, but this is And then now Mark Lefebvre is probably loath to ever endorse any point I've ever made online. But he did say something here that I would like to highlight, and I agree with. He says starting points matter.
Okay. So, what the hell just happened? I don't know why I would be loath to agree with any point he's ever made online. I can't think of any points he's made online that are important or interesting to me. So I don't know where he got that from. Like, I just have no idea, right? And so here's the problem. He made that up. I've never shown any disdain for any comment he's ever made, much less loathed it. Like, this is a made up thing in his head. I don't know where he got that from, right? But then the signal he's sending is that, well, even though Mark doesn't like anything I've ever said on the internet, I don't know what he said on the internet. Sorry. I have no idea. He's got a whole YouTube channel. I've never watched it. I think it's called The House of Woo. I think I looked for it once too, and I couldn't even find it. Like, whatever. And then he said, but I really like Mark's point. Right? And so he's made me the bad guy somehow over something, which I don't know what the hell he's talking about. And made himself the righteous, virtuous person by saying, but I really like his point, so I'm going to use it. I mean, like, I'm glad he's using my point. I really don't need the credit. I don't care. But, like, what was that all about? The signals work both ways, right? He's clearly gotten a signal, probably from the people who associated him with me. And he's probably got this rivalry going on in his head or something. I mean, I don't know. I have to speculate because I've never talked to the guy, right? Like, he asked me once on Randos United in a comment if I'd like to talk to him. And I basically said, why? About what? And I have live streams. If you want to come in, come on in. Like, I didn't know at the time he had his own channel. I had no idea. Like, how would I know that? So, like, I don't know, like, what's going on there? Right, but then he signals his virtuousness by making me the bad guy. And it's like, what is wrong with these lunatics? Why are they like this? Why are these people like this? Because that's really my only question. Why are these people like this? Why are they, we'll say, how do I want to say this? Hearing signals or sensing signals that aren't sent. They're not sent. Like, no one sent that signal. No one loathed anything he said on the internet. Like, I don't understand. Like, when did this happen? I mean, not no one. I mean, me. I did not do that. I did not do that. Like, I can't even think of a single thing he said that I've been interested enough in to comment on at all or care about. So I don't know where he got it from. And then, like I said, he's using that to elevate himself. And it's like, what the hell is going on? And what kind of a signal is that sending? And he ginned that up in his head because I guess apparently he has quite the imagination, according to Jacob. I believe Jacob. Jacob's pretty accurate on these things, which is fine. He can have an imagination, but like using me as your foil when I don't even know who the hell you are, care what you have to say on the internet. It's unbelievable. Yon God, I'm hostile to 9 billion people on the planet. Like, who cares then? Like, fine. Your indifference is hostility. Good. I'm hostile to such an overwhelming number of people because I'm just indifferent to them that the ones I'm not indifferent to don't even matter mathematically. What are you saying? Like, why are people doing craziness? And that's the thing. If you're looking for a signal and you're not getting it, maybe that's because you're insane. Like, I don't know. I'm just saying, this is why signals matter. And this is why accuracy in signals matter. Right? Because it matters what you hear and it matters what happened. And when those two are out of correspondence, right? What did they do? Oh, yeah. One of the big discussions was, well, you can't have doubt without belief. It's like, well, yeah, you would have to believe first before you could have doubt. That's true. So therefore, doubt is a form of belief. No, that is not logically consistent or correct. And this happened today. I was like, are these people were told they're smart by somebody. I'm like, oh no, we've done them a disservice. They're really dumb. They don't understand simple concepts. Why are they like this? Flat world, right? Oh, well, if you need one for the other, then they're reciprocal, which is false, by the way. This is why hierarchy matters, right? And therefore they're equivalent because transitive mathematical property or something. And I'm like, none of that works that way. Like I understand what you did, but also, what are you doing? And this is why signals matter. You can't just run around saying 2 + 2 = 5. Like, what are you doing? And the thing is, when you do that, you will create a normative order around it if you do it long enough and consistently enough around enough people. And this is why the internet is dangerous, because the internet allows for at-scale propagation of strong signals. And that's the problem. That's the problem. Fractal world. That's a sign that people want to own something, right? When they do the corner within a corner. Okay, bro. You want all the benefits of the higher scale, right? Of being higher in the hierarchy, right? Without having to be higher in the hierarchy or lower in the hierarchy. And you're trying to own the whole thing. And that's the funny part. Right? That's the weird part. But they're sending you the signals. Self-reference is another signal. It's another signal. It's an important signal. Yeah, not nice, Jacob. Yeah, I know you meant Mark Parker, but I'm glad you specified, sir. Yeah, I mean, it's just it's so important that we understand what signals are hitting us and how we're reacting, right? And what that means for us. Because if you really want a way to know yourself better, paying attention to the signals and how you react to them is really important. And I mean, not necessarily advocating this, but Stoicism is one of those things that does that, right? It says, look at the signals coming in, detach yourself from them, roughly speaking, right? And then pay attention to the important ones, the ones that you have the most control over, we'll say, and ignore the rest. That's roughly what Stoicism says. It says other things. I'm super reducing. I get that, right? But also, like, this idea of paying attention to signals is what gives you better insight into yourself, right? But it's so imperfect. Like, don't do this by yourself. Find other people, trust them, and get them, and get them involved in helping to make you better, right? Because, that's important, right? Roughly speaking, because the world needs you to be better. That's what the world needs, among other things. But it's important that we engage that way. And that's the thing. Like, what signals are we getting in? How are we responding? And what signals are we sending out? And like, this was my downfall, always. Like, I just, it's like, I remember the day I learned to drive better. So I'm from New England. One of the things I was especially good at, for whatever reason, from basically very young ages, I was really good at driving in traffic. Like, I could cut through traffic like nobody's business. I was amazing at it. I was so good. Other people occasionally would be like, Mark, I know I'm driving, but can you tell me when to switch lanes? And I would just say, switch now, switch now, switch. And with certain people who had good reaction times and knew how to listen, almost all of my friends, because everybody who didn't know that was not one of my friends, couldn't deal with them. They would actually ask me to do that because they were like in a hurry or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, no, get into this lane, change lanes now, right? And they'd just zip through traffic. They'd be like, how the hell did you do that? And I'm like, how do you not know how to do that? So one day I was driving down to New York City, and it was around rush hour. And I was outside of New York City somewhere. I forget where. And traffic's moving about 70, 75. And I've got this calculation system, right? And I'm like, okay, well, there's this, there's that. I call it a windowing system, right? I would calculate all the windows for all the lane changes and when they would appear and disappear. And then out of freaking nowhere, 3 cars in the span of like 4.5, 5 seconds were doing 100 miles an hour on a packed highway where everyone else was doing 75. And I was like, wait a minute. And I'm watching this and I'm running my little numbers on this, right? And I'm like, wait, there's no window there. What? There's no window there. There's no window there. And I'm like, this kept happening, right? Little groups of cars would come through it at like 100 miles an hour. I'm like, there's no physical space for these cars. What the hell is going on? Like, I'm watching them do it. So they're clearly able to go 100 miles an hour and I can't do it. And I'm like, how are they going faster than it's bumper to bumper traffic? There's half a car length between each car. How are they doing this? And then I thought about it for a very long time, probably a week afterwards. And I had pretty much memorized, because I can, the entire set of events, or at least the relevant ones, right? And so I was going over it in my head, probably in the background, and I was like, oh, this isn't a windowed-based system. I had 2 problems. One was linear discrete projection. I was projecting windows and calculating how fast they were opening and closing, right? And then, okay, well, once they're this big, you can put your car in there. Well, that's actually not true, as it turns out, right? If you use a continuous-based model, the windows go away, and the speed at which they open and close changes, just using it's a different math technically, although I can't do the math, right? But I can do the equivalent of the math. And the second problem, the bigger problem, was I wasn't accounting for the presence of the driver. So whenever I saw another car, I would put myself in the driver's seat and start to figure out how they drove. And this is remarkably effective for me for whatever reason. I understand most people probably can't do something like that, but I can. And so it's fine, right? It's cool. But I couldn't do that with these guys because my formula wasn't working. But the other factor was, because they were going 100 miles an hour through traffic, they could continue going through 100 miles an hour through traffic because the traffic was responding to them driving. And once I figured that out, I moved my entire brain to a flow model. And then I was like, oh, flow model. And then I just apply flow models to things now. And this is how I know how everything works, basically. And it's super fantastically much more accurate than the old system. And the old system was much more accurate than anybody else I'd ever met already. So this thing's damn near perfect. It is fantastic, especially for driving, pretty much for anything. I can just look at things and go also a lot of training with water, which I was doing today, by the way. I was straightening out the damage from the beaver and the overflow of my pond. I have to fix the main outflow pipe. I'll get out in the kayak and do that someday. But in the meantime, I had to this water's going to flow over here, right? I got to fix it before I open the floodgates up, right? Because stupid beaver keeps putting stuff there. I know what the signal of water running through this area looks like, and I can calculate it because I use a flow model. These signals matter. The signal of a car doing 100 miles an hour behind you, even if you're not consciously aware of it, because it turns out we have 2 processing systems in our brains. One's basically your lizard brain, by the way. It calculates shadows and movements, basically, right? It doesn't calculate detail, just movement. It's much quicker than is that a tiger? Is that a tiger? Is this whole complicated system that actually takes measurable time. Movement in the bushes, no time. It's just gone. That's your lizard brain, roughly speaking. Those signals are less clear. They get through quicker for a reason. And because of that, you can drive through traffic in what seem like impossible ways. And that's a good thing. And this is what actually happens. You are unconsciously being manipulated by the signals around you, the cars around you when you're driving, for example. Right. And so once I understood that, I was very young. I was probably 17. Yeah, I was probably a year into driving or something, 17 and a half, something like that. When I discovered this, and I was like, oh, well, that's so fascinating, right? Like, sort of figured everybody else figured it out too. Apparently not. Fair enough. What do I know? So other signals are things like, what did people say or what did they relate to me? And how do I use that? And that's what Mark D. Parker did, right? He's relating him to me, and then the image of me is this loathing bad guy. And I don't know where the loathing part comes from. That's kind of interesting. And then used me as the foil, right, to make himself righteous and say, see, but I'm going to use his good idea. And I'm like, well, whatever, like, fine. But like, I don't even need I don't care. Just say starting point. I don't care. This is not important to me. But he doesn't know what manipulated him into that. He doesn't understand why he asked me if I wanted to talk to him when I had showed no previous interest, and I really don't know anything about him. Like, I don't know, maybe he's super fascinating to talk to. From what I've seen of him on Jacob's stream and PBK's stream, I don't think we have anything to talk about. He seems to talk a lot of theology and woo, which is fine. Like, I'm just not super interested in either of those topics. So that doesn't that doesn't matter to me, right? But he thinks it does. So, I think Jacob's right. Like, people use this term all the time. No, Mark is really a narcissist. He really is. Yes, Jacob, I have a beaver. He's been around before, and he actually chopped down two trees that I want to chop down, but the rest of the time he's busy digging holes in my dam and pissing me off. He'll be dispatched soon, somehow, magically. You're basically allowed to kill animals on your property any time of year without a license, by the way, in the state of South Carolina. Yeehaw! The signals that you respond to, you should be aware exist, because otherwise you can get the wrong signal. And that's clearly what happened here. I don't know what the hell signal he got, but like, whatever. I mean, I'm glad he was reading my comments and thought starting point matters is important, because I said it because it's important. So there you go. It works out great for everybody. Super happy. PVK is not going to highlight any of my comments, so whatever. Yeah. This way of understanding what's going on is important, because a lot of times people will be like, oh, well, so-and-so said this, and so I did that. And I'm like, well, why would you do that? And they're like, well, because that's what they said. And I'm like, well, is that what they said? And then it turns out I don't have to be there. They'll like go through it in their heads and go, that's not what they said. And I'm like, well, then there you go. You made up a signal because you were looking for one, right? And this is where psychological projection comes in, right? If you believe a signal should be there and you don't hear one, some people are more prone to this than others. You'll put a signal there from your own brain. If you're a narcissist and you don't know why somebody did something because you don't have access to the information on why, which is almost all the time, by the way, then you'll project they did it for selfish reasons because you're selfish. Like, that's how psychological projection works. It's a projection of the signals from you unconsciously, not your conscious signals either, right? Onto the world. Could be another person, could be a thing, right? Because a lot of people, they'll talk about capitalism as this great monster that's attacking them and preventing them from doing great things. No. It's not capitalism, buddy. You know what's preventing you from doing great things in capitalism? You. In all cases, by the way. Just saying. Like, It's projection. You're projecting your useless loserness onto capitalism. It's not capitalism's fault that you're a loser. You could stop being a loser anytime you wanted. Or maybe you can't, you need help. Fair enough, get some help. But that's the funny part, is that when we're not paying attention to signals and their role in our interactions in the world, we actually don't know what's going on. And so if you don't know what's going on, it's probably because you're not paying attention to the signals. And fair enough, like no one's talking about this. They're not talking about, well, what would cause somebody to do that? What signals did they get from the world, and and from what part, right? And then also, what signals are you sending out? Right. If I'm sending out the signal of indifference, as Jan God claims, and that's somehow hostile, too bad, because I'm indifferent to almost everything because I'm a Stoic. So really, there's a lot of stuff I just don't care about, and I know about a lot of stuff I don't care about. Like I hear things that I didn't want to know all the time, and I'm like, why are you telling me this? Go away. Right? You need to know that. You need to know about these signals, and you need to understand what's happening with them, because they are affecting you and the people around you. And the thing about signals is, just because I see a signal interpreted a certain way doesn't mean you won't see the same signal and interpret it differently, because interpretation matters. And that problem gets compounded as you go up the stack. So you can say, well, language is a more refined set of signals than something else. Sure. Certainly true. And then that's still subject to misinterpretation. Maybe less, maybe more. Right? Because the finer and more accurate and precise a point you try to make, or a signal you try to get through, the more it relies on context. And this is why I was saying scale matters. Like if you spread your signal out to too many people, you're going to hit too many different contexts, and that signal is going to get read vastly differently. So scale matters. That's also why you have to go with more abstractions as you're talking to a larger audience. It's not optional, right? And so it's important to understand that. And again, signals have power. People react and respond to signals. Right. And so John the Pajot has told the story a few times, right? He's talked about this. I guess if you were Einstein, you'd call it spooky action at a distance or something, which I think is appropriate, actually, where he says, yeah, you can have agency without having agency, right? Like if I tell my kid to go get me a drink from the fridge and he goes and gets me a drink from the fridge, well, that is kind of a piece of magic. Right. But what actually happened there? Right? The child's responding to a bunch of, in this case, rather specific language signals. Fair enough. Like, that's good. And the child responds and it works and everything's fine. And that looks like magic because it's distributed agency or something. It's spiritual agency at some level. And that's the thing. Right? That works. So that's power. You can make somebody else do something with words. Yeah, in some cases you can. Now, those words have to match reality, right? I can't say, go to the refrigerator and get me my purple talking unicorn. I can't do that. I mean, I can physically do that, right? But like, it's not going to have a reasonable expected result that matches reality. I'm not saying my purple talking unicorn isn't real, because I'm going to die on that hill. All I'm saying is that this is where people get confused. The difference between matching naming to reality and not matching naming to reality. Right? Not matching naming to reality, again, doubt and belief are the same. So when I was doubting, I was really believing. It's just so blown away by that example. I'm like, are you okay, bro? Like, clearly you're either language retarded or just plain old retarded. I don't know which, but like, got problems. What do you What matters? What are you looking at? What's affecting you? What are the results? Like, does this match up with anything that's replicable in the world? Or is this like your personal feelings? Well, I feel like we have a community. Okay. Does anybody else feel that way? Or is it just you? Because I've seen that a lot of times online. We're all part of a community. No, bro. I remember years ago, such a bad mistake, dude. This wound up being a huge mistake. We knew this kid online. A buddy and I, he lived down the street in Marlborough, Mass. Um, and this kid was throwing a party, and he had a house. I think he had just gotten divorced. He had a house, and he was throwing a party, and we were like, if we don't go, maybe no one will show up, and that would be sad. So let's just go. And it turned out he had a decent number of people there, actually. I mean, it wasn't a huge party or anything, but like a few people showed up, including somebody I had never seen before. Oh, that didn't end well. That was a mess. Well, I shouldn't say that. It wasn't really a mess for me, but man, there was a mess there. So many bad things happened too. People got arrested for DUI, and it's crazy. That party was like one of these pivotal things that happened, right, to a bunch of people that no one could have foreseen, right? And that guy thought he was part of our group, of our community, because he came into our online space every once in a while. But really, he was an outcast. This poor guy. And that's why we went to the party that ended up disastrously at some level. Man, you try to offer drunk people a ride, and it doesn't work. I'm just saying. Poor kid. He ended up committing suicide not too long after that either, like a year later. But he got sober, and then he committed suicide. It's not good. It's a sad story. Oh, poor Bobby. I miss Bobby. These signals that are out there can get easily misinterpreted and confused by us, and we need other people to help us with this. Because we can't. What does it mean that you said collapsed a bunch of YouTube channels? I don't know. Did it? Or are these coincidences? Because they could be. Like, again, I don't know. Right? And that's the problem. That's the problem. There's too many signals. They're coming from too many places. Signals higher up the hierarchy sometimes seem like they're lower down or underneath us or something when they're not. Right? You see this all the time. People like, you better pay your taxes or you're going to get audited. And people don't listen, right? Or you better pay that bill or they're going to shut off whatever service, and people don't listen. And then they're all shocked when it happens. And you're like, bro, I told you. And they don't. Nah, you know what? This other company, I don't pay their bill all the time and they don't care. It's like, okay, bro, that's not the same company though. Just saying. Oh, you know what? I'm gonna adjust this ever so slightly. Yeah, I'm not gonna get the dragon any better. Sorry, Xnon. We may add more lights. So look, signals matter. Yeah, Don, that story took a turn. Look. I'll tell you a part of that story. So what happened after that, like probably 2 months before he passed away, actually, was he went into AA. He's an older guy. Boy, was he in his 40s or 50s? He was still living with his mom, although he's taking care of his mom, to be fair. Like, he had 2 degrees. He was not a stupid man. But he was an alcoholic. And basically, one day he called me up. And he was in AA because of this party. Like, that's how he was forced to go to AA by the judge. So one day he called me up and he goes, "Hey man, I got this, machine out of the junk, this computer out of the junkyard." And I was like, "Okay." He's like, "You want to come over and help me fix it?" And I'm like, "I mean, if you need my help, sure, why not? Like, whatever." And he's like, "Really?" And I was like, "Well, What kind of question is that? You asked. Like, first of all, it's a computer. Do you want to touch a new computer, Mark? Yes, yes, I do. I'm not well. Of course, I want to touch a different computer. I love computers, right? Um, he's like, well, I don't have another machine. I made it up. I don't have a machine. And I was like, what? Like, what are you talking? Like, he's like, do you want to come over and hang out? And I'm like, yeah, sure, man. If I mean, you're willing to call me up, I was like, I'll come over. Why not? And he's like, really? And I was like, what's going on? Why are you asking me questions and being surprised when I say sure? I don't get it. And then he started to tell me, well, I've been in AA. I was like, yeah, I knew that, Bobby. This is the news. He said, and this guy, my sponsor, gave me this trick. And I was like, okay. He said, yeah, what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to find out who your friends are. And I was like, okay. So now I'm like, wait a minute, I was a guinea pig this whole time. What happened? So apparently the trick is you go, hey man, I got a 12 pack. You want to come over and help me? And then what you're supposed to do is, before get them to agree, because they're all alcoholics are always going to agree to more beer, right? You're supposed to say like, nah, man, I was just kidding. I don't have no 12 pack, and see if they cancel. And basically, unfortunately for Bobby, almost all his friends canceled because he had nothing but alcoholic friends. And I was fascinated by this, right? I was like, really? That's a cool test. I like that kind of a test. I've got my own tests, variations on those themes for sure. I was like, oh, that's a cool test. I never would have thought of that because I'm not an alcoholic. I didn't really pay attention to alcoholics very much, except Bobby. Bobby was really cool. And so that way, right? So he's sending the signal, I have beer. And then he's saying, no, I don't really have beer. And then the signal he's getting back is whether or not someone is his friend. And if he didn't do that with me because he knew I didn't drink. I remember too. This is a funny story. This is 2 years before that, at least. But there was another party, right? So there's all these guys getting online and talking. Geez, is that a voice system? I don't think it was voice. Maybe it was voice. I don't remember. Long ass time ago, early internet days. So we were all talking. I think we were just typing, but we used to organize parties in the area because it was a Boston-based channel. None of us were anywhere near Boston, but like whatever. We're all 30 miles out of the city or 25 miles out of the city. But we'd get together on a regular basis and do these raucous weekend parties. And everybody knew I didn't drink, so whatever. And talk about weird signals. So they're all sitting there completely so mashed out of their minds somewhere in the middle of nowhere, Massachusetts even. I don't even remember where it was now. It was one of those podunk towns on the border on the Connecticut line, I think. And Bobby was like, bro, there's got to be something you drink. And I go, look, all right. There's only two things that I ever drink any of, and I never drink a lot. It's sake and rum and Coke. I am a sucker for good rum and Coke, and I'm a sucker for a good sake, for sure. There's no question about it. I should be near the things. And I've had sake, maybe 10 times in my life. And 6 of those times were because my buddy went to Japan and brought me back some sake from Japan, right? So much like clove cigarettes, which I also have a very hard time saying no to, but I've only smoked like 3 in my entire life, right? So he goes, oh, I'll make you a rum and Coke. And I'm like, bro, like light on the rum, because I can drink the Coke, but like the rum, I can't do alcohol. Like I don't like it actually. Even in rum and Coke and sake, it burns the shit out of my mouth. So I'm a no on alcohol for that and among other reasons. So he pours this goddamn thing and it's 3/4 rum. And I'm like, Bobby, I can't drink that. And he's like, no, I only put a little rum in it. And literally every drunk person in the room, all of whom were completely smashed, goes, no, dude, that's like 3/4 rum in stereo. Poor Bobby. He didn't know how much he was pouring. He was totally smashed. That was a real wild party. Oh, I don't even want to go into it. Yeah, it was the one I stayed the night. That was a mistake. Don't ever do that. Next time I'm driving home at 3 a.m. Screw it. That was the last time I stayed at night. Oh, I hate drunk people. Um, don't like babysitting drug addicts, alcoholics, or drug addicts. So these signals, and they get really loud when you're drunk, right? Signals go crazy. People hear signals that aren't there. That's why people get in fights, right? These signals are everywhere. And just like the next party, I think it was actually the next party, the party a year later or a few months later or whatever, uh, where Bobby didn't listen to us and we said, "You're drunk. You need to come home with us. We'll come and take you, we'll drive you home. We'll get you in the morning, bring you back. You can get your cards, whatever. We'll take care of it. Like, we're gonna take care of you, bro." Like, we were perfectly willing to go to the ends of the earth to make sure he didn't drive drunk, and he didn't listen to us, and he got caught and he got thrown in jail for the night and sent to the judge and lost his license, all this horrible stuff. Like, that happens, right? But you can't get signals through to those people sometimes. On the other hand, I've told this story before. My uncle, who doesn't drink anymore, he was an alcoholic when I guess when he was young. I wasn't aware of what was going on at that time. I was probably too young. But he had stopped drinking and he went to a party with a friend. And his friend said, "Hold my keys. And if I'm too drunk, don't give them to me." And sure enough, the end of the night comes. And the guy's like, "Oh man, give me my keys." And he's like, "No, you're drunk and you told me not to, so I'm not going to." And he was just insistent and he wouldn't leave my uncle alone. And finally my uncle went, "You know what? F you. You want to F and kill yourself? You go ahead and F and kill yourself." And he threw the keys like way down the street, like way down the street. And then he left and he never hung out with those people again because he was so annoyed and pissed off, right? And a little dogmatic, maybe, my uncle in his younger days. I don't know. Everybody loves him, by the way. He's just super, super affable person. Quite the character, too. Quite the character, indeed. 10 years later, he bumps into the guy. And the guy goes, "Al, how you doing?" And my uncle's kind of like, "What? He knew exactly who he was. He's like, I am so grateful that you did that night." And Al's like, "What? Wait, what? Like, what just happened?" Like, "What do you mean?" And he's like, "I haven't had a drop to drink since that night. I didn't realize anybody cared enough about me to make sure I wouldn't drink." And it's like, you never know what signals you're sending out. So it looks like a bad thing, right? Like, "Oh, fine, I'll give you your keys. You got to go get them, you drunken jerk." And so, he swore at him like 3 or 4 times. Like, my uncle was mad. It's like, don't make Lefevre's mad. You'll know it. You'll regret it, but you'll know it. If you think you've made one mad and you didn't instantly regret it, you ain't seen mad yet. That's for sure. But that's the thing. That signal was really powerful. That was such a strong signal. It was so salient. Even though he hadn't seen him in 10 years, the guy stopped drinking entirely from that one incident. These signals are powerful. So what signals are you sending out? They may look negative and not be negative. I mean, negative signals can have positive results. You need to know that. Whipping people out of the temple can be a good thing. People who can't read. Um, these signals matter a lot to your life. And you got to be careful which ones you're exposing yourself to. And yeah, there are certain exposures you can't avoid, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't do your best to avoid them and remind yourself when you're exposed to them that they're bad, because that's important and it matters a lot. That's all I got. That's all I can come up with. So if you want to join, I will post a link. You can come in. We can talk about signals. We can talk about their influence on power. Hopefully you started to see, right? The signals move the time, energy, and attention of the person, and the person implements power because they're the only ones that actually have power, except maybe whatever at the top of your hierarchy. And I think those concepts are important. I think they're significant. I think that paying attention to signals is what you need to do. Because that is a form of transmission of power. Right? Your words can transmit power. Now, how that power is received and what how that signal is received and what it manifests in terms of power, maybe you don't quite understand because it's too hard for you. And that's likely. And that's the problem. That I think is where people get, let's say, horribly confused or whatever. And you get, I mean, maybe Mark D. Parker is a hardcore narcissist, as Jacob suggests. I have no reason to doubt him. Maybe you are getting signals that no one's sending. Maybe those signals aren't the signals that you're getting are not the signals that were sent. Maybe you don't know how to read these signals. Maybe you don't understand what's moving you, what's manipulating you, what's pushing you through the world. And maybe you don't understand how your interaction with the world affects the people around you. Or maybe you do and you're doing it deliberately. Dun, dun, dun. You shouldn't do these things from one perspective. And the thing is, with without engagement, without participation, you can't look at the screen on somebody and know what they're up to. It's very, very hard, or it was very, very hard for people to tell that Lauren Southern wasn't a fraud. It wasn't hard for me to tell that she wasn't a fraud because I just looked at her and said, she's not a conservative. What is she talking about? She doesn't understand politics. What is she talking about? Why is she calling herself a conservative and doing politics, whatever that means? Oh, no. She's just an attention whore who's running around pouring her body out to get more attention. And that turned out to be exactly what was going on there. And it's like, well, okay. I mean, like, you do you, fair enough. I mean, if that's what you do, that's what you do, I guess. Also, you're a whore, so I'm not a conservative, that's for sure. And what signals were being sent? Oh, there's a conservative war because I said I'm a conservative, even though I'm not, right? So what you have is the bifurcated left fighting the bifurcated left and calling it a civil war. Meanwhile, the conservatives are just feeding everybody until the war ends and they can just roll back in and take over. Whatever. Not saying that's what's happened. Oh no, that's exactly what's happening. Never mind. That's what I'm saying. If you didn't read that correctly, if you didn't read the signals correctly, fair enough. Like I get it, but also you could have seen that. Right. You could have seen that when Steve Bannon was around that everything he said was correct. Now that we know that that's true because of what's happened recently, we're running the Steve Bannon playbook the way Steve Bannon wanted it run. And wow, all the things Steve Bannon said seem to be correct so far. They're all getting uncovered in a hurry. Might be a hint, right? Like, oh, there are people that see these signals clearly and that know roughly which ones are relevant better than you do. And so maybe you want to pay attention to that. Or maybe you go down a rabbit hole and worry about, the exact form of the mistake that you think somebody made. Like, oh, when they interpreted the Bible this way, actually the Hebrew says, oh my goodness, dude, really? And then it doesn't affect anything because a lot of times it doesn't. And this is where people are getting super confused. It's like there are lots of details that don't make a difference because they don't affect the signal or they affect the signal at the wrong scale. And so it doesn't change anything. A lot of the fractal nature of reality means that a lot of the layers of reality aren't going to have any effect at all on the other layers. At all. And that's part of the confusion that people have. It's also part of why I advocate for understanding a neutral state. Because if you're stuck in the binary, everything's good or bad, it's just going to be a hard life for you. You're not going to understand that most actions are just neutral. And the results of those actions, like growing food, could go either way. Maybe the food you grow goes to feed your enemies and they murder you for it. I don't know. Maybe the food you grow feeds the next great man who saves civilization from itself. I don't know. That's a neutral act. You're not going to blame the farmer. That's the, you know who else drank water? Hitler. It's like, come on, dude. Some things have to be neutral. Most things have to be neutral, actually. And there's more bad things than good things. So pay attention. It also means it's easier to spot bad than it is good, which also means it's easier to read bad into good, right? Because there's just more bad signal out there. Sure. Or more signal of bad, or both, right? It's super important. Like, I don't, it's hard to overstate the importance of signals. I mean, I don't have this for no reason. Have you considered? What signals are you missing? What signals are you deliberately ignoring? What signals came from you and not from outside of you? Do you know where you end and other things begin? Super important. And, maybe you can do things like, look, group meditation in the right kind of group, abso-freaking-lutely. No, you don't name yourself a Muppet. I told you you're all Muppets. It's not that hard. I don't know why you think you're involved in this situation. You're not. This is the problem everybody has. They think they're wrapped up in things they're not. Mark D. Parker thinks I loathe all of his ideas on the internet when I haven't engaged with very many of them at all. And I can't actually remember a single idea he's proposed that I've actually had any emotion about whatsoever. He's wrapping me up in something I'm not involved in. Loathe all of my ideas on the internet. I don't even know what your ideas are. It's so crazy. And then, using that to be pious. It's a disgusting move. Whatever. Also makes me laugh. So, like, hey, free entertainment for Mark. I'll take it. Does he know? I don't know. I mean, maybe he'll watch this. Will it make him upset? I don't know. And that's the problem. That's the problem. Like, he's not aware. I mean, Jacob's probably right. He's not aware as a narcissist that he inserted that signal into the world or where it came from, because I know where it came from. I know that this confusion early on by new people into those little cults caused him to sort of gin up this monster in his head called the other Mark, or whatever I'm called in his head. And that now there's this bizarre rivalry going on in an alternate universe. You want alternate universe? It's called your fantasy. That's an alternate universe. Just to let you know. Fantasy is alternate universe making. And that would that would clear things up. What is the multiverse? It's everybody's fantasy. Sally Joe, I mean, I wish all the Marks would join and we could find the worthy Mark. What? Look, thanks, Sally. Thought you already had. All right. How do you ban people in StreamYard again? Let me just get that out. Jeez. With friends like this, who needs enemies? Oh my goodness. Oh, I should pin that link, huh? Let me pin that link before I forget again. Constantly forgetting to do things. There, link pinned to navigating patterns if you want to jump in. We don't have to talk about signals and power, but I suspect people want to. Oh my goodness, that ginger tea is really good. Sally Joe, we need a better nemesis for the channel. I see. We have the mark. We need the anti-mark. Are we gonna torture me over myth versus story now? My latest video. Is that what we're gonna do? These little little cults is not nemesis worthy. That's true. Those little cults are not nemesis worthy. Um, that's true. Young God, I think we're here for the cool stories. I don't know. Did you get cool stories, Young God? I've got tons of stories. I tend to tell stories because it's very hard to relate stories to people in the world we're in now, right? Like the number of times I try to explain something to people and they go, "You can't possibly know that." And I'm like, "I don't know why you would believe everybody doesn't know that, but okay." And then it just turns out they spent their life in video games, and so they didn't think there was enough time to learn things like sailing and how to cut down trees and how to fix cars and how to program computers and how to become a network expert and right, on and on and on. Right, because you wasted your time playing video games, you idiot. That's not my fault. Ixnon, we need the mark of power and the mark of courage to combine with the mark of wisdom for the try mark. I love it. I love it. It's fantastic. I'm very happy. Jacob, how's it going, my
Hello.
friend?
Good.
going
How are
on?
you?
I'm doing all right. I'm still recovering from whatever stomachy, throaty, illnessy thing that I had for way too long, but I'm all right. I was utterly I was sitting there engaged in this stupid live stream, and then I hear Mark Parker talking about me. It was a total segue too, because there was no lead up whatsoever.
Honestly, I don't even want to talk about it because like
Well, you met him, right? In person?
yes, and
Okay.
like he in Los Angeles, no, he has serious problems, and it was a major reason that I was like, okay, I'm done with this. But
Really?
I did post something in community on my channel, and now I'm like totally done with him. But so this what you're talking about with signals, it goes back to basically everything we've been talking about forever, which is relevance realization and
Right.
and where you put your attention. And like you haven't been following the Doge stuff as obsessively as I have. Have you been following that at all?
A little bit. I see stuff on Twitter, basically.
Oh, I have been obsessively listening to this stuff, and it's just absolutely amazing to me how the deep state, like, they're just so slow to and so I've started talking about the beast waking up and roaring and fighting back, right? They're at the roar stage now. They just woke up like today.
Yeah.
And Musk is just running circles around them because they've blinded themselves with all of their stupidity, and so they have no capacity. It's so interesting and fascinating, and and then so now there's a snowstorm this weekend in Washington D.C. So like all the normal employees are going to go home and stuff, right? Leaving the Doge teams to do what they're doing for a whole other weekend, and they're going to come back on Monday and like be completely at a loss. And it's like, oh my God. Yeah.
They're stuck in a pattern, right? And patterns with momentum are very hard to change.
Mm-hmm.
And this is part of the reason why, I mean, I want to try to be a little bit fair to Rene Girard, because like to some extent, I just think, postmodern demon possession, because he's a lit crit guy. Like, hello. I don't know how much more obvious it could be. He started out as a literary critic, guys. Like, this isn't that hard to figure out, right? But like, if you don't understand the pattern, you'll pick up on the pattern he's giving you, which is wrong, right? Because he basically says there's mimetic desire, which is incorrect. I mean, that does exist, but like the way he couches it, like that's all there is, right? And then that always inevitably leads to a scapegoat sacrifice of an innocent person. And it's like, no, that isn't the pattern at all. Like, so
right.
So,
I think that was, I mean, I haven't read Girard myself. And
listen to his interviews with David Cayley. I mean, they're long, but then you can hear him in his own words. You don't need to read the books because he gives it all away there and in compressed form in his own. It's him talking for the most part.
okay. I mean, I don't care enough about Renee Girard, but like,
Fair.
yeah, I've just been following everything on Twitter, and it's just mostly on Twitter, but I've been also like deliberately listening to all of the left-wing podcasts, like Pod Save America and Kara Swisher and stuff. And like Maxine Waters and Chuck Schumer tried in their 80-year-old selves to pull their normal stuff of like
their magic, their little
and with and they're just so slow. I think the only word I can use for it is it's just running circles around them.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, they're stuck in a pattern with a high momentum field, right? Because it's hard to understand things if you split it into two, right? There's way more than two things going on here, right? One of them is the momentum of the bureaucracy. So when people use the deep state, right, that's an agent in the world. That's a silly way to think about it, right? But like the deep state is just the statement of the momentum of the bureaucracy.
The inertia,
right. It does what it does. And it hasn't been redirected correctly in a long time. And suddenly now it's being corralled. It's not being redirected now, right? That didn't happen. What happened is now it's being corralled. Right? And it's caught off guard because it's not even used to being redirected. And now it's just being corralled up and like forced to go in a direction that it didn't know existed and didn't think was real. And now it's just chaos for them. It's like, sorry.
Yeah. I mean, what needs to happen, and I'm guessing is what they're working on. See, this is the thing. Like I'm listening to all these podcasts, and I think I know what the goal is. I think I can see what the goal is, which is OMB, the president's Office of Management and Budget, right, is going to submit a budget to Congress, and then the Republicans in Congress have to pass it, right? Both the House and the Senate. Right. And we'll see how, if they can do that, which I'm guessing they will. But the Doge teams are mapping this in order to make this budget, right? And when I'm listening to like everybody talking, nobody is actually like bringing up, oh, this is the danger. That's what's going to happen.
Right. They can't think that far ahead because, and they're not supposed to be fair, right? In a perfectly functioning system, I don't need to worry about what the CEO is going to do with the things that I put forth. So that leads me to a quick story. Let me do a quick story, Jacob, because I think this will help. So I worked for a company called Cadence Design Systems. Now, Cadence Design Systems, and I had worked for these types of companies before, but what they do is, roughly speaking, computer-aided design and computer-aided engineering, CAD/CAM, right? Okay. Now, they don't do it for things you would recognize. They do it for chips, right? So the way you design a chip is you use Cadence's software. There's only two companies, I think, in the space, Cadence and Synopsys or something. But Cadence was the big dog, right? And so all the Intel chips you use are designed using their software. And so
Mhm.
their software, even back in the day, I worked there in what 2000, 2001. Um, that their software was huge. So what was happening in the company, unbeknownst to me, because my good buddy, my best friend, actually got me hired there, right?
Mm.
Um, what their goal was to give IT an impossible support the engineering team task, wait
Mhm.
for IT to fail to support the engineering team, and then take over IT for that. Now, there's lots of problems with this. Software engineers are retarded and they can't do networks and they can't install operating systems. They can't, and they shouldn't have to. Like that's
Right.
ridiculous, right? So they had brought me in as the quote IT liaison. And yes, I came up with that title. It was a title at the company I was at before, oddly, which was a CAD CAM company that it's oddly didn't do chips. They did cars and furniture and every other thing, but not chips. And
Mhm.
so they hired me in this role. They paid me like a software engineer, but I didn't write any freaking software. Thank God. And then I could just focus. Well, that was all Verilog and math. That was heavy math stuff. I could focus on building infrastructure and supporting the engineers. But I was
Okay.
getting paid like a king. It was fantastic. I loved that job. I was still getting paid half what I would have gotten paid I consulted, but I was getting paid pretty well. I wasn't whining. Let me put it that way. And I got to hang out with software engineers who were really smart all day long, basically. And I acted as the go-between between IT and the software engineering team.
Mhm.
Well, the thing was, they used to give me these tasks that, according to them, were impossible, and of course, I pulled them off right away. And they're like, "Well, how did you do that?" And I'm like, "You told me to do a thing, I did it. Like, I don't even understand the question." Like,
Right.
if I thought it was impossible, I would have said, "No, I can't do that." I didn't say that. I just went and did it because, like, you hired me for a job. Like, I
Right.
was horribly confused, Jacob, the whole time. I was like, I don't like something's weird. But it turns out that
Right.
the new VP, his plan was the IT team is going to fail and we're going to take this over. I didn't know that. And
Yeah.
they, with me there, they couldn't do it. So they had to get rid of me. And I'm
Right.
like, I
They
didn't know any of this at the time. I found out a year later, right? I
Uh-huh.
was like, what? Right. Well, which is fine. Like, whatever. I mean, I'm not mad. I'm a little pissed off at how it was handled because other things were happening, right? Like a lot of this gaslighting that I'm used to, right? Like at one point, I told the guy, I said, yeah, when we did the network switch over, because among other things, I am a top level network engineer. I was like, they disconnected this thing after I told them not to because they thought it was redundant, and I could tell it wasn't because of the way the lights were blinking. And my boss called his buddy, who never talked to me, and said, "Well, no, the lights don't correspond to the network traffic." And I'm like, "That's not true if it's the same device by the same manufacturer and it's in this particular configuration."
Mm.
Right? And of course, it was supposed to be, and it wasn't. So the lights should have matched because Buddy had no way to do that. So he just basically told me, "You got lucky." I'm like, "Bro, I did not get lucky. I'm a network engineer. I
Right.
was absolutely right." So there's a lot of gaslighting going on. But like that happened. I mean, this is a Fortune 500 company at the time. That happens. Right?
Mhm.
Because the bureaucracy is moving towards a goal and you're not necessarily plugged in and you're not supposed to be necessarily. This is very
Right.
frustrating to people. And I understand because I've been the actual victim of this, right?
Mhm.
But I'm not bitter at all. Like whatever. This is
Right. I mean, the people
this
who are
could have been
doing the
handled.
work, the people who are doing the work do the work that they're doing, right? But I mean, I just expected the people like Ezra Klein, like for about 8 years now, I have been following Ezra Klein because I know that his opinions matter incredibly in setting elite opinion. And
Mhm.
I believed he was incredibly duplicitous and saying things that he knew were false. And now it's becoming clear to me that he was high on his own supply.
Yeah.
That he actually believed the stuff that he was saying,
Mm-hmm.
which makes him completely blind.
Yep. 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 My old boss actually believes that I was a bullshitter, even though every one of my predictions, everything I said, all the things I did worked. He still thinks that I'm full of it to this day, probably. He has no idea, right? And he was a pretty smart guy, generally. I mean, look, one quick tip that I did not learn, obviously, that I'll pass on to everybody. If when you're interviewing with somebody, they ask you if you're familiar with Machiavelli, just leave the interview. Don't go back there. No amount of money is working for somebody who cares about that.
He asked you if you're familiar with Machiavelli.
Yes. He asked me if I had read Machiavelli's The Prince, which I had not read, but I was familiar with the basic outline and what he was trying to do. And right. And so instead of saying like, we're done here, I'm not working for you, I foolishly said, nah, that doesn't matter. But it did matter. It was a signal that I missed. It's like, yeah. But that's the thing. I mean, and it's easy too. Like when everything's working a certain way, I won't say well, because maybe it's not working well, but it's working a certain way, and it seems to be following a pattern, and that pattern isn't broken right away, then it's very easy for people to come up with their little pet, this is how things work, like Curtis Yarvin. Although, man, he's, to be fair to him, at least he's saying like, oh yeah, I was wrong about that.
He's been apologizing. He's been apologizing. The funny thing is, all of the people who were constantly saying when Elon Musk fired 80% of the Twitter employees, Twitter's going to go down, Twitter's going to go down.
You're going to regret that.
Yeah. Are saying the same things right now about the federal government.
That's the pattern.
It's like, do you not realize you were wrong then?
No, they don't. Right, they don't. Well, and it's very hard for especially certain types of people to understand where their deficit is. And this is why individualism is the death of society, because it's not just that we're all off doing our own thing, because that actually turns out to be okay if your political structure, for example, is in place. Then yeah, you actually can get away with it for decades. The US is proof of that, right? But it's not a good idea. The problem is the corruption increases, especially in subsequent generations, because you're not using external references to retune where you're at. In other words, PVK's excellent point, which you should talk about more, you outsource your sanity. There's no more sanity outsourcing going on. And, you're not protecting your distributed cognition, Jacob. So I do agree with you there. Right. And so what's happening is it's getting worse. Like if you don't maintain things, entropy, they get worse. And that the signal you feed yourself becomes louder. And then once the signal you feed yourself starts to become louder, the outside signals don't penetrate your brain. And to some extent, you're supposed to be in a healthy organization that allows for that, right? Not everybody, because some people are supposed to be at the top of the hierarchy, right? They have different blind spots, though, right? So Brett Cooper, I think it was today, her new channel, she just came out with episode 3, right? Sort of inspired me to change my set around too, because she was experimenting with her set. And she's talking about, we don't care about the Hollywood people anymore. Why? Because they showed they were so disconnected during the fake news virus scam, COVID nonsense. And so we haven't been listening to them anymore. And she's probably speaking, this is why I watch her stuff occasionally. She's probably speaking to her generation, and she's probably saying something true about that generation, as bad as that is for society, that it's generationally split. That's probably true, because there are still a lot of people paying attention to celebrities. Right. And then, of course, there's a rise of the influencers, because celebrity doesn't go away. It just changes the locus.
Yeah, I mean, the young people still have their celebrities. I mean, PewDiePie, what's Felix Schellenberger? That's his real name.
Yeah.
Right?
Felix.
He is basically the Gary Cooper or Elvis Presley of this generation.
Right.
And it's just that the boomers have no idea. Like PewDiePie, they might know the name PewDiePie, but when the word Felix Schellenberger, I mean, right now they're just catching up with Joe Rogan.
Right. Yeah, Well, and fair enough, because Joe Rogan's closer to them in some sense. And if you don't need the universalism, this stuff doesn't actually matter that much at the end of the day. But they're very delusional. So, and Brett Cooper's a great example. So one of the things, because I actually monitored this, because I'm like, oh, this is actually going to be interesting to see how it gets analyzed. So Brett Cooper leaves the Daily Wire, and all of these online internet personality people of various flavors and levels of fame and whatnot are pointing things out like, well, you know what? This is the internet age. And in this case, personality matters. And you can't just like keep your show and change personalities and expect it to matter like you could in the mainstream media. And I'm like, you couldn't do that in the mainstream media either, guys. Like, just look at the Tonight Show fight, which was funny because 3 or 4 months ago, I was watching a breakdown of like how Conan O'Brien got screwed in the late night wars, right? Because I remember the late night wars and how big a deal it was and how much of a scumbag I always thought Jay Leno was from day one, the minute I saw him. And it just turns out, yeah, he was a bigger scumbag than most people realized. It didn't fool me for a second, but it fooled a lot of people. And it's like, no, it's always been that way, guys. Like, audience follows person. Audience doesn't, but they think the mainstream media worked that way ever. And I'm like, no, it actually never did, right? Because they don't know, right? They weren't there. They didn't watch, what happened when Walter Cronkite went off air, right? They didn't watch what happened during the late night wars were amazing. Right, because you just watch these huge swings of people just leaving to go follow Conan O'Brien around or whatever, mostly younger people. So there's always a generational component, but they don't know about that. And so to them, this is their revolution and they can prove that they're different from their parents and their grandparents. And it's like, it's the same story, guys. I hate to break it to you, but it's interesting to watch.
Yeah.
But that's the pattern. And when you're stuck in the pattern, when you don't recognize, a bad pattern from a good pattern or a real pattern from a fake pattern, that's the LARPing component, right? If we want to be completely fair, which I'm loath to do for sure. But that's not loathing at Mark D. Parker, dude. Chill out. Loathing at somebody else entirely, who I definitely have loathing for, by the way.
Actually, Yon God, I wasn't thinking. I was thinking about Scott Pressler. So I don't know if you, I doubt you know who Scott Pressler is. He is this really active MAGA guy. He's this very flamboyant gay man, but very but has been really a mainstay of MAGA, right, for a long time. He goes by The Persistence, and somebody today tried to cancel him for being gay, and everybody's like, dude, like this is a really, really flamboyantly, here, I'll pull up the picture, so this guy posts this picture to of Scott. Scott's the tall guy, right? And he's like, we need to get this guy should be exiled from MAGA. This is disgusting. Now look at the 6 million views, 4,000 likes, 12,000 comments.
Wow.
And Scott's reply gets 27,000 likes, right? With only 200,000 views. There are like, everybody is dunking on this guy, right? And it's like, you tried you tried to cancel the wrong person.
Right.
So that's what I was thinking of. So sorry to disappoint you, Yon God, but yeah, we're talking about thing. And Sally, I think Sally is actually right. Meme review might be a really good thing to do. Did you watch PewDiePie ever?
I've seen a few of his things. I mean, it's just
it wasn't so interesting to me. I watched it.
Yeah.
I watched them just to see what the kids were like.
Yeah,
Nowadays,
exactly.
nowadays he's posting videos of him and his wife and his kid mostly.
Yeah, I've seen that. I've seen the newer stuff. Sally Joe. Now we just have to get Mark to do meme reviews. No. Submit memes to the Discord. No. I'm not doing meme review. Cassandra. Oh, I think I remember that book review. Yeah. No, I hate memes, and they should be expunged from the universe to save us all from their evil. Also, nobody, ancient Egypt, pictograms, regression. No, we think it's okay. We're going backwards in language, guys. Like, I hate to. Yeah, I don't know.
I like memes. If they're done well, I'm.
I like memes too, but like, all right, Jacob. If I say to you, I don't care, Margaret.
Yeah.
Would you call that a meme or not?
It's become a meme. It has. Yeah.
I don't think it is, because everybody knows what it means irrespective of the context. Whereas if you post something with The Office on it, I'm not going to, well, the American version, because I watched the British version, not the American version. I'm not going to know what it means because I didn't watch The Office, and I hate that show. So sometimes it can be funny, but also I hate that show for very good reasons.
Okay, here. This is the present that Benjamin Netanyahu gave President Trump.
Okay.
Do you know what it is?
No idea.
Okay, so it is a golden beeper mounted on a cedar wood.
Okay.
Because yeah, cedars of Lebanon, right?
Ah, okay. Okay.
And you heard, I'm sure you've heard of the beeper thing. Yes, this is real. No. I didn't think it was real either. When I first saw it, I thought it was a hilarious meme. No. He actually gave him this.
Right.
And
right.
and that's meme culture.
Right. No. I understand that symbolism is re-entering the zeitgeist through memes.
Yeah.
Like, right. Oh,
the world is being enchanted. There you go.
That's different. That's different.
Yeah.
Right. It's part of the re-enchantment or the enchantment that breaks through, or however you want to sort of parse it. So yeah, I mean, I get that part of it, and then there's nothing inherently wrong with that. The problem with memes, and I will do a video on this, is that they go into the quote realm of transformative coupling, and they kind of penetrate, and then they come right back down again, because they don't really cause a transformation, right? They don't really convey, we'll say, lasting, important information over time. Actually, do I have the meta memes? Oh, I don't have it. I thought I had the meta meme loaded. I don't have my meta meme. But a billion years ago, I did the meta meme. Like, I got to the end of memes.
Sally, if you want to do a meme review, you could do a meme review on your own.
Sally could do a
meme
review.
An art review. Yeah. And to Sally's earlier point, Scott is so flamingly openly gay. Like, yeah, whatever. Okay, I am going to actually get to services. It was nice meeting you.
Okay. Oh, good. Good to see you, sir.
Don't do anything I would do.
I won't. That's not hard. That was nice of Jacob to pop in. Yeah, look, memes are very bad types of signals, right? Because they're not stable through people. And that's why I don't like them. They're highly unstable with respect to other people. And I've watched people in real time, 3 different people watch the same meme and come away with completely different messages. And I'm like, this is not. Everyone goes, we need decentralization, we need more, more individual choice. I don't know why we can't all be unified. Because you've cut that off by making things distributed decentralized and individualistic, you moron. You gotta pick one. And this is the problem with memes. They're decentralized and individualistic. There we go. Ixnon, Sally's meme review. Sir memes a lot. I don't know. There's a lot of memes that define 2016 and the wild happenings that went on. If you say so, I wouldn't know because I didn't understand any of the memes in 2016. So they define them for you and maybe a bunch of people that were watching what you were watching on TV or were engaging with those memes at the same time. That's actually a tiny number of people. And this is the big problem with signaling and the internet in general is this problem, right? Like, oh, the internet allows you to reach a large enough number of people that it's not discernible to you from the whole world. And so you think, oh, the whole world saw this, when in fact, no, a few 100 million people at best, and there's 9 billion people or something on the planet. And that's where people get confused, right? Because they don't want civilization. They want humanism and universalism and all these things. And that's endemic. Like that's in all the churches and everything now, or not all of them, but most of them. And that's a real problem because then it's like, well, what does culture mean? And it's like, what a dumb question, but okay, like let's entertain it. And then you tell them there's a difference between culture and civilization, and then they get confused. And right. And these concepts are just too much for them, probably because memes rotted their brain, quite honestly. Like this is the problem. When you make simple one-to-one connections like memes do, you don't really understand the depth of the world. You don't understand hierarchy and how deep and wide it can be. And then you're in domicile or headed for it. And that's part of the problem. Right? Sure memes a lot. Yeah, but there's no engaging with any art without subjective experience. I wasn't talking about subjective experience. I was saying it's not unifying. Sally Joe, no, I want Mark too. The world needs this. I couldn't do meme review. I don't even care about memes. It's never going to happen, Sally. Ixnon, memes are confirmation bias. Yeah, well, exactly because they're individualistic. They lead to confirmation bias. And then what you do is you find people in the world and that's who they are. I'm not a structuralist. I don't even know why do people throw around words that don't mean anything? Like structure exists independent of whether or not you care about it. Like structuralism. Like, why do people just make up these wackadoo terms and then other people go, ooh, it's nutbag made up this term. This other person must apply to this. That's not how that works. This is what memes do to your brain. They rot your brain. They make you think you can cast your own psychological projection of how the world works on others and put them in a box. Like I loathe everything Mark T. Parker's ever said on the internet. Like, what are you talking about? I don't even know what he said on the internet. What's this guy on about? It's the same problem. It's like, what are you saying? I don't know what you're saying. Like, and also like he's one of these guys, like, again, he could come on, he could talk to me. I didn't say no, I'm never going to talk to you. I said, I don't know what I'd talk to you about or why I want to talk to you, but you're welcome to come on my live stream. And he never did, which is fine. Like, I'm not mad. I just don't care because I don't care about most of the 9 billion people on the planet. Sorry. Because I can't, and I'm not interested, and I ain't going to do it even if I could. There's all that, right? Not a big deal. You don't either. You don't even know them. Right. And so what that means is that he had the opportunity to find out about me, to learn about me, to know something about me by engaging with me, because you can't know by somebody's YouTube channel. This is the big complaint. I mean, this is exactly what Brett Cooper was talking about today in her episode 3 there was, well, we found out too much about the celebrities and now we don't like them because it turns out they're not likable people. Right. You didn't know them. You thought you knew them. But what you wanted to know about them was actually the image they were projecting and not all these other things that they forced on you. Also true. That's how it works, right? You're a Peugeot fan, right? I mean, I don't know what that means. I know about Peugeot. I disagree with them on a bunch of things. Like, what do you mean a Peugeot fan? you're trying to understand me without participating. It's never going to work, by the way, because it's sort of complicated. Yes, sure, we're doing this book club, right? It's not my book club, right? It's Manuel's book club, and Manuel's my buddy, and I figured I'd help him and engage in the book club. Does that make me a fan? I don't know. I don't know. I listened to Taylor Swift once. Am I a Taylor Swift fan? Like, meaningless designations projected from your psychology, not from anything that I've signaled. This is the imaginary signal problem. There it is. Right? But that's the problem. Right? So when Mark D. Parker earlier today says, "Oh yeah, Mark, who's loath to agree with me, anything I've ever said on the internet," it's fantasy at that point. A bunch of people start nodding, right? Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm like, this didn't even happen. What is wrong with you people? I mean, this is great for me because it's funny as hell. I mean, you shouldn't laugh at retarded people, but also it's kind of funny. So what do you want me to do? It is funny. Don't be retarded and I won't laugh at you, I guess. I don't know. How am I supposed to get out of this situation? Right? And that's the problem, right? That's the problem. You they don't know me. They've refused to engage with my work, right? Which is fine, right? And they've refused to participate with me, which is also fine, right? And Sally had the same problem with the PVK and his crew, right? Years and years of trying and no progress, right? Manuel had the same problem too, and that's fine. Like, no one's mad, but also like that happened, and it's good to know, and it's okay. Like, different groups are different, and they should be. There's nothing wrong with that. And if you fit in with the Lost Boys over there, who are never going to do anything because it's been 7 years and they haven't done anything, hey, go. I guess, like, I don't think it's healthy, but whatever, right? Ixnon, do you oscillate and blow around? Then you might be a fan. Exactly. Thank you. Whoops. Garth, because celebrities are meme deficient. Memes don't mean anything, dude. They made Ski Diddy Biden. Well, no. They tried to participate in something that they didn't understand because they hadn't participated in it before, and then they screwed it up. This is 0% surprising, right? Like, you hand a 2-year-old a chainsaw, they're not going to cut down a tree, and that's effectively all that happened there. It's really not. Everybody reads in complexity where it isn't, and then where there's real complexity, they gloss over it. Like, that was the PVK live stream today. I'm like, really, guys? This is what we're gonna do? And then they hit it at the end. I'm like, oh, you guys are definitely gonna hit it at the end. And they did. They hit it at the end. Right? What is a true Christian? I don't know, but I just declared a bunch of people Christians who don't identify that way. It's like, good job, idiots. They make the same mistake over and over again. Dawn, I was traumatized when we found out that Bill Cosby was a monster. I don't know about that, Dawn. That was the least compelling story of all time. Well, I just happened to be walking down the street and got led into the Playboy Mansion. And did you know there's sex and drugs there? I was like, I don't know, man. Really? That's your story, huh? Now I just assume most famous people are hiding something. He didn't hide it. He said, yeah, absolutely. I definitely did Quaaludes with her. He didn't hide anything. Well, and we do hide things, right? I mean, we don't give our entire authentic selves up to the internet or anything. I mean, some people do, right? I mean, it can be embarrassing. I remember Christian Golden on his channel doing something early on, and he was like, the getting to the heart of these little cults. And then his entire walk through the woods was him basically doing a private confession of his father, who had been a drunk, but had apparently cleaned himself up, handling his mother's death better than he did. And he was clearly upset about that. And I was like, well, that's an embarrassing video to put on YouTube, but I guess, I don't know if it's still up, by the way, but, and I owe Bruce a steak now because I was watching it on, while I was on my Discord, he watched it. And I've spent ever since then, it was a year and a half, 2 years, apologizing to him for that one incident because he never would have watched that if not for me. And it was a horrible video that was false advertising and horrible and everything else. Well, Kirk, I used to have the keys to Jacob's live StreamYard for quite a while, but that predates you, so you wouldn't know that. It's because Jacob linked his channel onto Navigating Patterns because he's a good dude. It's not that hard. Streams a lot. Bill Cosby was a cultural icon and a household name. Yeah, well, and he was also very wholesome because he did family shows, right? So it's reasonable for people to be shocked to see how much evil he was involved. I don't know, man. Like maybe not. Like I said, the stories people were telling were the least convincing somebody did something bad to me stories I have ever heard in my life. You're at the Playboy Mansion. Hello? You know, Pearl Davis has been going on about Harvey Weinstein did nothing wrong. And I'm like, not terribly many convincing stories there. There's a couple of incidents where it's like, yeah, that's definitely over the line. But it, like, I went up to do a casting call in his hotel room. I didn't know it was wrong. I'm like, that's the least believable thing that you could ever say in the history of the universe. Hello, like, come on, like at a certain point, these people, right? But yeah, I mean, if you find out that you're perfect, wholesome, family-friendly guy, maybe he has an open marriage, maybe he does more drugs than you thought possible, right? Maybe he combines, there's all kinds of things, right? But we all have little skeletons and such not in our closet, right? Like, bring me a box of ring dings and 2 Mountain Dews and see what the hell happens. I'm downing those puppies right on camera right now. I haven't had ring dings in so long, and I'm angry about it. I won't even code. I'll just freaking mow those puppies down. There'll be crumbs everywhere. Chaos, madness. Like, we all have our things, right? Sally Joe, I'm mad because people are not meeting their potential. Well, yeah. And the thing that people keep forgetting is that they need to be better because the world needs you to be better. That is true. And people aren't meeting their potential. And that should make people upset. And it doesn't, right? Like now we're like, oh, it's okay. You're fine the way you are. I mean, Jordan Peterson talks about this. You're fine the way you are. Like, no one wants to hear that. What a terrible thing to say to people. You're not getting any better. Thanks. That's fantastic. You don't need to get any better. Oh boy. Thanks for giving me new life goals. And people don't see that. People don't see that. And it's too bad because, yeah, I mean, we want and we need to something. I mean, this is Paul VanderKlay, another great. I wish I had all the videos. So one of these days I'll use the little software that Danny wrote and I'll go grab all these stupid transcripts and figure out what these videos are. Another great piece of Pastor Paul VanderKlay's work is church is ideal. Right? And that's actually an idea that Joey gave him, but whatever. We can pretend it's Pastor Paul's work. Anyway, right? Because you need the ideal. You're not going to uphold the ideal perfectly, sure, because it's an ideal, but you need it there as a signal. If you don't have the ideal as a signal, the signals degrade anyway. And so if you're starting down here instead of up here, the degradation just happens quicker. So that's not good, right? Signals degrade over time. Entropy affects everything. And that's the problem. Right? That's really the problem. That if you don't understand signals, if you don't understand attenuation of signals, if you don't understand what's driving you through signals and what signals you're sending out, then you're going to get awfully confused about the world, right? What are the odds in Hollywood or with any kind of fame that someone's not going to go to parties, drink too much, do too many drugs, and have a lot of unwholesome activities going on. They're not high. They're not, it's not zero, right? But it's not good odds for these people. And that's not, again, it's not necessarily a bad thing. Brett Cooper, episode 3, right? Oh, and then we saw what the Hollywood people were really like. And the more we saw of them, the more we hated them. Right. Right. Because you want them to be the ideal. And when they take that ideal outside of well-written roles, even, right, then that ideal gets corrupted. And that's a real problem. Sally Joe. Also, failing others and generally making things worse and cheating people out of wanting to be nice. Gross and unbecoming of men. Yeah, well, that's also true. Also true. Sir Memes a lot. Can you provide examples of signals and how people are affected by them? I did that earlier. You'll have to rewind. And you can watch Mark D. Parker get completely affected by signals and then send out a bunch of signals in return. That was actually earlier. I also gave a bunch already, but it's okay. It takes a while to catch up. I do this very specifically, a very specific way, because it's a very specific filter that gets me a very specific result. Yeah. Anyway, we won't talk about what people would consider psyops, because they're not, but they would think of them that way. When you're dealing with the world and the fact that signals are all around you, and the fact that when you don't hear signals, you will insert them into the world like Mark D. Parker did. If you're not aware of that, a lot of things just seem stranger than they need to. And that's the issue. Like, just stranger than they need to. Good Lord, for the love of all goodness, no. Like, my God. Yeah, I saw Twin Peaks. It's garbage. Like, I don't understand. Like, I totally saw Twin Peaks, dude. I suffered through the whole stupid thing. And I don't want to say I'm lesser for it, but also, like, what is wrong with this guy? But then, like, he did the original Dune, right? Which was excellent. So constraints are good for people. And when they don't have them, this is the lesson of Jaws, right? Spielberg talks about it, right? Like, oh, the fact that the mechanical shark didn't work actually made a better movie, right? The fact that I was stupid and didn't listen to anybody and tried to film in real water was really bad, but also made a better movie, right? And that's the problem. I don't know. I'm a huge Twin Peaks fan. Can I ask what you don't like about it? Why don't I just start with all the things I like about it? Oh, okay, that list is done. I don't like parasitic storytelling. So what David Lynch is doing is, instead of telling an original story, or even a single story, because he's really playing with, see on Navigating Patterns, see my latest video on myth versus story, right? He's really playing with the mythos, right? And so, I don't want to be too hard on David Lynch, because it's not like what he did was deliberately bad or anything, but also, like, it's not good messages in that show. So you've got this long history at this point of soap operas. And so there is almost a mythology in soap operas. Kind of. I have to be sloppy here, because the problem of today, roughly speaking, is things like soap operas and the fact that they developed a pseudo mythology, right? Within the culture. And so what he's doing is he's parasitizing that, right? And making fun of it, right? While pointing outside at demonic forces effectively, right? But not, well, there's no resolution, so that's already a problem. But not in a useful, helpful way. Like, there's nothing in Twin Peaks that's going to help you to discern good from evil. Even though that's the underlying theme of Twin Peaks, is there's evil in the world. It's genuinely evil. It doesn't even come from a person because it can jump from person to person, right? And there's ways to experience it, right? But it doesn't get proper discernment. And so it's kind of like, what are you doing? And I think people like it for the novelty, and I think people like it because it's not wrong, but it's so incomplete, and it doesn't resolve anything, and it is parasitic. And yeah, I mean, I think Don's comment is excellent. Don, when I think back about why I loved Twin Peaks, I realized I was seduced by the look and feel and the sound of it, not the story. Right. The stories aren't terribly interesting, except the overarching story is terribly interesting, but he doesn't actually do that much with it at the end of the day. And he is playing with a lot of cool tech, right? So it's basically a series of shiny show. Look, entertainment is not bad. You need entertainment. I watched the whole thing. Like, I sat through the whole thing. I'm not going to regret it or anything, right? But also, like, there was so much potential to actually do goodness with that show, and he just didn't bother. I don't know if he was lazy or if he didn't know what he was doing or whatever. I have no idea, right? I never met the guy. Like, I haven't participated with David Lynch other than through his movies. So I only know what he tells me, right? And then there's so many cool technical tricks that David Lynch did, and only David Lynch ever did, by the way, at least as near as I can tell, that maybe that alone is enough to, quote, recommend it. But story-wise, not great, right? So it means a lot. I think the message primarily was about the abuse Laura Palmer experienced and how that shapes not only people involved, but the community as a whole. Again, it's a pseudo mythos, so there's not one storyline. There's a bunch of storylines. See my video on navigating patterns that I just put out the other day or yesterday. Actually, yesterday. Ixnon, contrast Twin Peaks with Lovecraft. Sometimes I hate you. Both have supernatural, untouchable components that are unnamed, unnameable, and unresolved. Right? Which is fascinating. Lovecraft is a master of Gothic horror. He's so much better at Gothic horror than anybody else that it's not even worth putting anyone else in his class. David Lynch is primarily experimenting with technologies and techniques that are built around TV and movie making. And like, look, for that, like, he's amazing. Like, what he had the actors memorize the lines in reverse and say them in reverse, and then reversed the film so they talked funny. Like, this freaking unbelievable. What a wacky thing to do. It's wild. And that whole I forget which episode that is. It's near the end. That whole episode is amazing. And partly because of that, right? Because they're speak it in reverse and then he plays it forward. And so they speak funny in a way that is basically irreproducible, right? And so Jan God, is there a good show? There's lots of good shows. Sally Joe Redwall. Yeah, Ricky Tiki Tavi. There's tons of good shows. That's not the issue. When you're dealing with Lovecraft, you're dealing with a direct encounter, experiential, phenomenological encounter with evil. And an evil that you can't imagine. Right? When you're dealing with Twin Peaks, you're dealing with an indirect encounter with evil. I mean, to Sir Memes-a-Lot points, you know, one of the themes in the story is the effect that that this incident has on the town. Right? And like, fair enough. And all this wacky, unrealistic stuff happens. Actually, that's pretty silly. Um, and just to play with, roughly speaking, sexual perversion, unfortunately. And I'm not saying those are invalid themes, but also this is why we have fairy tales. Why do we need this? Right? So in many ways, to your point, Ixnon, like there are opposites, right? Because one is very supernatural heavy, and the other is very supernatural light. Right? And one is very much focused on a main character, and the other is focused on no main characters, effectively. Like there's no main characters in Twin Peaks. Right? And again, it's weird, right? Because the way Lovecraft builds mythos is not the way somebody like Tolkien builds mythos. So that's that's kind of interesting, right? It just gives you a little flavor into what mythos is and is not, right? And if you want more, again, you can see that video. Because actually, I think it's a good video. So it means a lot. Do you lean more towards Lynch's films? No, like I said, look, he does some cool stuff, but whatever. I mean, I like good stories, and like everybody brings up these things, and I'm like, yeah, but they're terrible stories, and the writing's awful, and it's just like, I get that you like them, and I know why you like them, and there's nothing wrong with that, but like, I like good stories. I don't care about effects at all. I don't care about new styles of filmmaking. And not that I don't find them cool and attractive sometimes. And like I said, I mean, what he did in that, I forget what episode that is, a famous episode of Twin Peaks, but like, that was neat. Like, that was really cool. Now, I thought he should have done something theme-wise, but he couldn't manage it. Or maybe he didn't care. Like, I think he got lazy, personally, with the story, because there was so much opportunity there, and he just didn't do it. So it means a lot. Also, Lovecraft comes across as nihilistic to me. Yeah, it would. The cosmic horror never seems to have a triumphant element to it. That depends what you mean by triumphant. Not offended. Generally, yeah, my taste is eclectic. I like the top 10% of everything. And Lynch is not in the top 10% of anything, except in some cases for certain types of special effects. But like overall, it's like saying J.K. Rowling or George R.R. Martin's a good author. I'm like, did you read the writing? Because that's like, no. Right? Oh, they're good storytellers. J.K. Rowling is an okay storyteller. Good? No. Sorry. Like, I know what the attraction is. It's just not what you think it is. And that's okay. Like, the world is huge. Like, what signals did you get when you read Harry Potter? Right? And this is going to come out if Jesse ever gets back to me. Jesse, this is going to come out in the Matrix thing. Right? And hey, look, I've said it before, so I'll say it again. Cypher did nothing wrong. Like, the choice of the Matrix is no world is real, despite what they use the word real. No world is real. There's 3 worlds presented, by the way. None of them are real. 3. Did you notice 3 worlds in the Matrix? Then you missed it, right? No world is real. You can choose the one where you live in a dingy submarine with a bunch of misfits who you didn't grow up with and don't know anything about, right? That are being chased through the sewers of a dead city. Not just sewers of a dead city. Like, degraded sewers somehow. It's amazing imagery, actually, right? By squids with freaking laser eyes. Plug me back in. What are you, high? Like, this isn't a choice. You're nuts. And then I heard it. I've been listening to Vervaeke way too much because, like, at this point, any of his new stuff is way too much. And he goes through that retarded experiment that like he should know better, right? Like, I have my students. Sample bias much? Well-known problem in psychology, has been well known for 25 years at least. Sampling college students is a bad plan for psychology. Everybody knows this. I don't know why John doesn't know this, right? And then I asked them, if you're in a committed relationship, would you want to know if your spouse was cheating, right? And they all go, yes, we would. And he goes, why? And it's like, because then it wouldn't be real, right? And then you look at any freaking relationship, when people are cheating, does the spouse want to know? Hell no. Did I want to know? Hell no. I remember my buddy, right? We were business partners, the three of us. They were living together. I was living with my girlfriend, right? I had the house. They had an apartment down the street. He goes, Mark, you have to deal with this. You know what's going on. And I was like, no, I don't have to deal with this. Yes, I know what's going on. I don't have to do anything. You can't make me do anything. And then I was like, yeah, I have to deal with this. And I throw her out because she was cheating with my business partner. So I didn't want to know that. I knew that, and I wasn't going to act. I'm like, nah, I can keep this illusion going. This is almost everybody does that. So John can say what he wants about his stupid bad sample, wrong, self-report, which is known to be garbage in psychology all day long, but that's actually wrong, and everybody in the world knows it, right? And this is why we get into trouble, because we don't realize the things we say are illusions. They're illusory. Speech has no hold. So it means a lot. No one overcomes the cosmic horror. Right. Well, that is the purpose. I think that Catholics don't mind Lovecraft so much. So it means a lot. The Matrix is an extremely Gnostic film. Well, yes. So is every other film, pretty much, except for a handful. So unless you want to transcend matter, then The Matrix won't appeal thematically. I love The Matrix. I've watched it like 100 times. I don't know what to tell you. It's also a terrible film that no one should ever watch. But also, I love The Matrix. It's like, yes, bundle of contradictions. Sally Joe, Divergence, Twilight, Hunger Games, Harry Potter, all closed world. Damn it, Sally! It's almost like you've heard anything I've said. That's fantastic. Good day. Harry Potter was better by incident, but still very closed. Right. Well, and it also it's also Age of Gnosis, right? It's very much propositions are magic, and using propositions makes magic. Although, to be perfectly fair, J.K. Rowling knows full well you can't just speak magic. It has to come with action, physical action. Right. Very important. Sally Joe, oh yeah, Game of Thrones goes with those. Of course. Wait, Game of Thrones is garbage. I mean, George R.R. Martin. It's another one of those freaking internet projects that failed, like Lost and Snakes on a Plane. These are internet projects that failed. I want you to know that, right? Internet bad. Internet projects bad, right? Every once in a while one hits, like, oh shoot, what's it called? Is it called Mars? Whatever. That was actually a really good film. That guy wrote that online. And then there's some 3D glasses that were developed in an internet project online. That did well. But like, if you understood how many internet projects there were, like for writing and for movies and for scripts and for tech projects and software projects, and how almost every single one of them, and it's not 99, it's 99.9% fail, then that gives you a different view on how useful the internet is and why it matters, right? Oh, The Martian, that's what it's called, right? Yeah, with my boy there. What's his name? Yeah, my brain's not working today. Brain tired. Need water. There we go. Much better. Look, movies in particular are a bunch of signals. That's why I'm surprised Jesse's not here. I'm surprised that Jesse didn't put away all the time and make the world vanish just to show up for this one. He's probably moving, to be fair. what you expose yourself to movie wise matters, and music wise, very much. Um, because those signals are affecting you in ways you don't understand for sure. And maybe some of them you understand some of the ways, but like ultimately you don't. Like a lot of people watch The Matrix and they didn't look, the entire physics community was manipulated by The Matrix. And almost nobody seems to realize this even now. I'm like, guys, it's exactly 10 years after The Matrix comes out, they start talking about simulation theory seriously and putting out simulation theory papers like mad. That's not a coincidence. That's the effect of The Matrix. That's what it is. Also, simulation theory is just perfect, intelligent design theory. And that just cracks me up that they're better at creationism than the creationists are. It makes me laugh every time I think about it. They're all so stupid. We should follow the science. Why? These people are retarded. They're the biggest sheep on the planet. What is it? Medicine progresses one coffin at a time. Yes. All of science progresses one coffin at a time. It's a very large system with a lot of momentum, right? So it's kind of slow moving in a way, but it has momentum. And the change factor, the signal factor, is the absence of signal, right? And so one Nobel Prize winner, and if I remember correctly, he didn't win the Nobel Prize in medicine, but one Nobel Prize winner once said, I think probably salt would cause high blood pressure and heart attacks in the 1950s or something retarded. And then everybody went out for the next like 40 years and wrote papers and did experiments to prove what he said was true. And then it just ended up that that was wrong and that their experiments had been skewed in that direction because of that signal from that one Nobel Prize winner who I believe wasn't even a medical doctor. Like signals are really powerful. There's your freaking example. There's another example. Right? Like signals are really powerful. And they are moving you, whether you realize it or not. So you damn well better figure out what signals you're putting in and getting and filter out the ones that are bad. Right? I mean, this is equivalent to we're gonna, not look at porn or not play video games for this week or this month or whatever kind of crazy trends are going on. Was it PX90, like things like that? This is the same sort of thing, right? Where you're shaping the signals and then you change the signals you're exposed to. You're not exposed to the same signals all the time anymore. And then your perspective on the world changes. Yeah, of course it does. That's a function of signals or lack thereof, right? I mean, and again, particularly if you're high anxiety, you're going to create signals that aren't there in the world. And confirmation bias, you're going to find a way to make them valid. I mean, Mark D. Parker probably thinks I loathe everything he says on the internet. I honestly can't think of a single thing that he said that I can even remember. Sorry, bro. Like, I don't know why you think you're that important, but Jacob said he's a narcissist, and man, is that good evidence of narcissism right there. But think of all the other narcissists who are like nodding along with him and on the video. And, oh yeah, definitely. And I'm like, what are you guys talking about? Are you okay? Do you need something? Can I get you a straitjacket or a padded room or maybe a nice quiet vacation somewhere where you can decompress? Like, Digital Gnosis was there too, right? Nathan Orman. And I was surprised he didn't do, because he's done this before. Of course, the poor kids had mental issues for quite a while. He had some mental breaks, but like I was surprised he didn't say anything about me, because I remember I encountered him once on the Awakening from the Meaning Crisis Discord server, and I didn't even say anything bad to him. I was just like, bro, you're like in the wrong place. You're not going to make any progress. We're just a bunch of different people, and this isn't a cult. And a year after that, he was talking to Cassidy. Cassidy had jumped on his stream and he brought me up out of the blue. She didn't. And I was like, really? This guy's been thinking about me for a year? And then a few months later after that, he was like, this Mark guy who claims he's been part of every hip startup ever. And I'm like, what? When did I make that claim? It's just like, man, this kid's way off. It's just completely nuts. And, I mean, I laugh So it's not woe is me, because it's really not. Like, I just find this horrifically funny. So it's good life on my end. But like, it's a bad thing that people are projecting that badly onto me. I just can't care. There's 9 billion people in the world, bro. You don't mean anything to me. Sorry. Oh my God. You're not helping with the practices, the books, because actually I'm gonna write another one soon. I gotta get the first one done first. Um, you're not helping with the YouTube channel, you're not helping with thumbnails, you're not helping with either of the websites. You do you. I'm not mad, but like also like you're not participating. How much can I care about you? I've got things to do that I have to care about. You're not here helping me clean up the yard or getting rid of the damn beaver for me, are you? How much am I've got people here I need to care about. I don't have time. I got people on my Discord server I need to care about. I don't have time to care about you and your freaking opinions. Like, I don't know. Ixnot. Nathan said your content makes him depressed in the chat. He did? Oh, I didn't even notice. Oh, PVK highlight. Of course, PVK highlighted it. That should tell you everything you need to know about PVK, by the way. Like everything right there. Whatever. You do you. You can think that's a good thing all day long. We got whole lists of PVK's bad behavior. It's pretty bad too. I guess I was probably tied up or maybe out of the room. It's not like I was sitting riveted to the computer. I was like going to get tea and talking to people on the Discord server while I was watching that stream, and they were popping on and off because they were like, I can't believe this. I just can't watch this anymore. And I'm like, whatever. It's research for my stream. And it turned out to be good research. I was sitting in the middle going like, oh no, this is going to be the first time I wasted my time watching a stream because it's not relevant to my thing. And then I'm like, I can clip this and show it on my stream. This is great. New experiment for Mark. It just ended up being the best PVK live stream for my Friday stream of all time. Who knew? I didn't know that was going to happen. I'm glad it did, though. It's been great. I don't know how my content, I mean, I could see how it would make you depressed. Like if you think you know something about the world and I show you that you're dumb, sure, absolutely. Also, maybe you should embrace being dumb and fix it. Because you can, because I'm giving you the tools to do that, right? Just embrace your Muppetness. Man, the camera's really struggling. One of these days, I will have $1 billion and I will get a new camera. Yeah, I mean that's the problem. That's the problem. Sally Joe, and yet they remain deluded that I'm nice. So ridiculous. Poor Sally. She gets really. Sally went through and listened to all of her talks with PVK recently, and I don't know. I put her on suicide watch. I think she'll be fine though. Sir means a lot. Do you have a beef with PVK? Many. I don't keep up with those little cults too much. That's good. I'm just a friend of Jacob's. Yeah, that's even better. Lots of people have a beef with PVK. That's why they have high churn. They brag about this. I'm like, I wouldn't be bragging about high churn. I'd be learning from it. But hey, you do you. You don't want to learn from a signal like high churn? Don't do it. Ixnon, PVK is a troll. Well, that's true. He highlighted my comment to troll Luke. Right. Yeah. I mean, among other things, he's also a snake, but that's a problem. Or perhaps the thing before the snake. Oh, yeah. Manuel came up with something absolutely brilliant interpretation of the snake in the tree of knowledge of good and bad today that that's amazing. Like sometimes Manuel just comes out with these whoppingly excellent takes on things. Don, not sure, but I think PVK thinks you're not credible, right? Because you pushed the Anglo-Cathodoxy. Yeah, this is way before that. But you don't actually go to church, near as I can figure. Yet nobody knows whether or not I go to church. Those people are just arrogant. That's part of the problem. And actually, they do know that I have gone to church, right? Like they know Father Eric was here doing church in my house for a week. Like they're full of garbage, right? That may be their excuse, Don, and I get it. But they don't know what they're talking about because they refuse to engage and participate. And that's fine. Like I'm not mad. I don't want snakes in my participation pool anyway. We had that problem on Awakening from the Meaning Crisis. It doesn't go well. So I'm okay. Sally Joe. Well, PVK openly promotes witchcraft. So yeah, well, yes, among other things, right? Yeah. I mean, look, and this is a symbolic world. People did this too. One of them wrote an article like, oh, well, maybe John Vervaeke's talking about Hermes is okay because God brings people to him in strange ways. And I was like, what? And in the same article, the guy's like writing down like, well, Hermes isn't explicitly occult. And I'm like, Hermes, Hermeticism, occult. Are you sure? Because nothing could be more wrong than that statement. Like, it is. It explicitly occult. Like, hello. And then he went down this historical path with Hermes Trismegistus and all this like backwards timeline nonsense. I'm like, even Wikipedia doesn't agree with this take. That's pretty bad because Wikipedia, it's hit or miss on that particular set of topics. It's too bad. Ixanon, those little cults has high churn partly because it's oriented across and not up. Exactly. Yeah, it's very flat world. But they have high churn because and like nobody knows this, right? Like if you haven't gone to a refuge from those people, and there are many, then you wouldn't hear the horror stories. Like, oh, that made me worse. I bet it did. I'm sorry. Can we help you? Because we will try. We feel partially responsible for that. So because we entertained his bullshit far too long. Like you wouldn't know, right? If you don't sample the bad behavior, then all you have is good behavior and everything looks good, right? And that's the trick that they play on everybody too. Look, we let Luke in. Look, we're not even that mean to Mark, even though we keep dragging him in and kicking him out and dragging him in and kicking him out. Go away. Oh my goodness. And yeah, they have a high churn because when people with problems go there, they don't get any help from any of those people. Right. And so, of course, they have high churn. Most of the lost boys that find them are going to want help. And the people there only want to push their own agenda and be sneaky evangelicals. And that's like, whatever. Like, you do you. But, like, I would rather just help people. Thank you very much. I don't care about their theology. That's not interesting to me. Peterson doesn't do theology. So you are trying to copy Peterson, but you're doing theology, not realizing that if you're doing theology, you couldn't possibly be copying Peterson. Whatever, like you do, you psychopaths. Sally Joe, absolute heresy to promote spellcraft and tarot as a minister, extra hell damning the weak and stupid. Yes, well, yes, Sally, that is correct. That's all I have to say about that. Sir memes a lot. I'd argue better people are better off just being orthodox, and those little cults seem to be constant agonizing over the meaning crisis. They don't even understand what the meaning crisis is. And while you can argue that people are better off being orthodox, that isn't going to work for Jordan Peterson and John Vervaeke. And the Jonathan Peugeot take of just go to church is dumb and won't work for meaning crisis people at all. And I've explained this to Paul. So if you go on Paul's channel, you can find all my videos with him. I think there's like 4. The first half of the first one, which is about 2 hours, is my personal story, or at least part of it. And then the early outline of the knowledge engine model. We have better versions, both in live stream form and in recorded form on Navigating Patterns, of course, that you should watch. But that early description is not wrong or anything. We just changed some of the wording and hopefully things got more clear. The problem with go to church is that if you aren't ready, willing, and able to receive the information that church has to offer in the way that it needs to be received, in other words, the poetic way of informing the world, see the knowledge engine model, it won't work. Like that's how people who are in the crisis of faith, not the meaning crisis, those are two different things, end up there, right? Like their poetic way of informing the world goes away or is usurped or whatever. They lose it, right? Or it's unpracticed and it degrades, entropies over time. And then they can't get back into church, right? And that needs to be rebuilt. And if you look at what Peterson's doing, that's one of the many things that he's doing. See my videos on Peterson on Navigating Patterns, right? I outline that there, or at least part of it. And that's the problem. Like, if you're following what you think Peterson's doing, but you're doing it from your frame, you're misreading what he's doing. PVK thinks that Peterson is Billy Graham. Like explicitly, I've discussed this with him. And in a later video, like I did a third way video with PVK. That's a good one. This talks about the difference between meaning crisis, crisis of faith, etc. I think that's in there. And then the one I did with Joey and with Father Eric on PVK's channel, that's good. You can find all those and you can watch them and you can make up your own mind. Don, Mark, you said something earlier today about participation versus dogma. Probably. Do you think someone can participate in the church even if they can't accept the concept of the Trinity as true? Oh, Don, why do you do this to me? Your acceptance of truth is irrelevant to the world. Sorry, you're just not that important. I think that's what I want. I'm going to leave this up for a bit. I mean, I had a great discussion. I wish I recorded all my Discord discussions sometimes. We had a great discussion with Bruce and Manuel today. But I was explaining over and over again, like, okay, let me explain to you fundamentalism. This isn't the only form of fundamentalism, but it's the most common. Fundamentalism is relying on the book, right? Sola Scriptura is all fundamentalism. It's all a form of fundamentalism. It has to be, right? Or it has to reduce to that over a very short period of time. The Catholics don't subscribe to that. They're more about what did you do and how did it affect the world and how did it affect you, right? Whereas Bruce, who's awesome, I love Bruce to death, I've met him. Bruce is great, right? But he's reform, and he's like, no, you have to make the words work, and then we have to compare the words to your actions. And I'm like, yeah, the Catholics don't give a crap about words. They really don't. I don't think the Orthodox do either, but I don't know the Orthodox as well. Like, they're not interested in your, quote, confession of faith, which is a foolish, crazy concept the Catholics don't recognize. Right? They are concerned with private confession, right? They are concerned with how you act in the world. They aren't concerned with if you go to church. They aren't concerned with if you ever read the Bible or even open it. They just don't care about that. Right? And they're not a no on any of it. It's all plus nice to have stuff, but unnecessary. And my argument is you shouldn't try to read the Bible. You can't understand it anyway. You're a moron. Whatever. Like, you should have it read to you. When you just participate and do the right thing, that makes it open to everyone. The problem with Protestantism, and this is explicit, and all the Protestants I know actually give up on this point pretty early, is that they don't have a mechanism to let people in who don't have a way to rationalize the text for themselves. So it forces you to be an individual, which forces you out of participation. This is wrapped up in the intimacy crisis. You can see any of my videos in the intimacy crisis. I've got like 3 of them now on my channel. It's not good for you and it's not good for them, right? Because participation is the key to the world. Everything else is irrelevant. All the conversations, all the talking, all the books, burn all the books. Oh my goodness, let's burn all the books, please. This is all irrelevant to the world. What's relevant is what you've done, what you do. Did you clear whatever mess the beaver made, or are you going to let it overflow the dam? Let me know. That matters. What matters is not a conversation about the beaver. Although, yes, Don, the beaver fur is very, very soft. It's quite nice. Beavers were big business in North America. I mean, I'm French Canadian. This is what we did, right? We hunted beavers. All the talk about beavers and speculation about beavers and conversation about beavers and jokes about beavers, which I love, are not going to do anything about what the beaver's doing and what's happening as a result of the beaver's existence, like these holes that are in my dam. Feel free to give to my new tractor fund. They're only about $35,000, these tractors. But I do need one to fix the dam now. And it's not going to fix anything in the world. Like, nothing's going to change, right? Whereas I can go somewhere and share a meal with you and not speak a word, and we can become bonded in a way that Mere words can't, right? Or better yet, a campfire, right? Or better yet, not a conversation, but let's all sing something together or chant or hum together, right? Like these are very powerful participations that bind people together. And it's the binding of people that they don't like because they don't want a binding, because they don't want constraint, because they want freedom. Freedom from what? Consequence and constraint. When you start listening for that, you'll hear it everywhere. Participation is king. Truth and belief in truth is really not. I think it will probably follow, but I really don't care because I'm a pragmatist, right? And a stoic. Ixnon, sola scriptura equals fundamentalism, can confirm. Yeah. Sir memes a lot. I'm Cajun. We have that in common. Okay, good. Cool. Yeah, we're Arcadian, I think. I was about to make a joke about your French trapper ancestors speak through you. Well, you should have. I often keep saying like I'm gonna imbibe my ancestral values and go hunt that beaver myself. It turns out, according to my quick research, if you don't catch him on the first rung, you're never gonna catch him. Like there are certain animals like that. Like if the trap doesn't work, you're screwed. They will never fall for another trap. And it's a lot of work to do proper trapping. I mean, it's not a huge amount, but like I'd have to actually invest some real time and effort into it. And it's easier to hunt gators a la Swamp People. Just the most amazing show I've ever seen. Don would agree with Luke Thompson when he said that printing press led to nothing good. Burn all the books. Yes. Burn all the books. Yes. I am probably a no on the printing press. I am probably yes, Protestantism, but without the printing press, it wouldn't have been as bad. I think that's where I land. The Protestant catastrophe was a bad catastrophe, but the printing press made it worse. But I would point to the fact that it's not the printing press alone, right? It's the mechanization of the world. Right? Because we've got guillotines, we've got precision cannoneering, right? We've got precision rifling. All of these things are the factors that led up to the Great War. Jonathan Peugeot actually put out a clip about this recently. He says, we're still living in the myth of World War II. Well, I hate the idea of World War II. You mean the second act of the Great War that was inevitable, because it was. And any contemporary writings, I've read them on microfiche. You could read them too if you weren't super lazy. Everybody knew there was going to be a part 2. Like, everybody knew, right? They were like, either Germany's going to vanish, and in the vanishment, they're going to give one gasping fight, or there'll be a fight over the vacuum that Germany leaves when it dies as a result of the Treaty of Versailles, which is the worst treaty that you could conceive of having as a result of a war, because the French are just horrible people. Hence why my ancestors left to go to live in an unlivable part of the world called Canada. I'm going to die on that hill. And so basically, the fruits of what we call World War II are very clearly the myth that we're living in. But that was all the result of this mechanization. And someday, maybe Adam and I know we have to do the Russian Revolution. Maybe this weekend we'll actually record that one. But then I have to edit it. What a nightmare. Maybe I can get my editor back. Who knows? If anybody wants to do free editing for me, let me know. The signal that was set off by mechanization, the success signal, so still following the pattern of Napoleon. That's why when he says World War II, I'm like, yeah, but it actually goes back to Napoleon, whatever, right? Which is the resolution to the French Revolution. But it doesn't solve feminism, because that comes out of the French Revolution. There's all this stuff. Oh, I wish I could just do all the stuff. But I can't. I forget about being able to communicate it to anybody. I can't do it in my head. There's just too much stuff at once. But I see it, which is fun. Um, when you understand the momentum and what's happening with mimicry there, it's like, oh no, right? And that's the really the issue is that the printing press is one symptom of mechanization. And then you get Paul Kingsnorth talking about the machine, and I'm like, you moron. The machines are the enemy, and Christianity is not a machine, and civilization is not a machine. And we didn't build the civilization with machines. That's actually completely incorrect. You're a lunatic. Anyway, all right, I'm gonna stop there. Um, you already made the joke for me. Oh, good. Okay. Well, I have lots of French or bad jokes. We actually keep alligators in the swamp in the middle of my college campus. You guys are insane. I live in the Midlands of South Carolina. No alligators here. Ixnay. Now, Mark will rage against the machine. Yes, well predicted, sir. Don seems to follow that every technology we've ever invented just took us further away from God. I don't know about that. More Towers of Babel. I think there's only one Tower of Babel, and that's the problem, is people don't want to deal with the implication of proper pluralism. As long as you're not trying to universalize the world, everything is fine. It's the minute you say, well, we should be able to let anybody from any country move to any other country, right? Because what you're saying is we can mix cultures. And if you were to mix cultures, you would need a Tower of Babel. You couldn't have many towers of, we'll say, faith. You'd have to have one. That's universalism. That's one of many messages in the Tower of Babel is universalism is bad. Don't do it, you dumbass. I am not sure that every tower you build is bad or a Tower of Babel. In fact, I think that can't be true. So I was was yelling at Sarah today. I was saying, like, every time I see a guitar in a church, I want to burn the guitar and possibly the church, but only if everyone's in it, because I hate guitars in churches. I hate it. I hate drums in churches. And now Sarah is a classically trained pianist. We have 2 keyboards in the house. I said, I don't even like keyboards. I'm okay with pipe organs. So I'm just yelling. She's laughing. Whatever. It's fun over here. It really is. I'm having a great life. Yeah, so I'm going off on only pipe organs, harps, lyres, and voices, right? Like, that's it. Everything else is not appropriate for church. And she's, of course, trying to defend electronic keyboards, which she's hauled around with her and played in churches for weddings and things like that in the past. And I'm going, no, I will have none of this. And yeah, we're just going back and forth in absurdity. It was rather fun. And there's a reason for that. Like, I think there's a technical reason, and there's a participatory reason. Like, pipe organs and harps aren't optimal either, right? Because with the voice, everybody can contribute and should. And that was very powerful. Like I actually saw the power of that when I went to the DC conference a while back. PVK was there. Nate was there. I met Nate there. That was Spencer Clavin and I can't remember Joe's last name. Sorry, Joe, I can't remember your last name. So a bunch of people were there. I mean, it wasn't huge, right? Elizabeth was there actually, and Justine. I was like, "What are you guys doing here? This is a tiny gathering. Why are you here?" It was great. Father Eric came. Obviously, I was in DC with Father Eric. And Michael Martin was there. I really like Michael Martin. He's interesting. I mean, he's wrong about Christian anarchy because that's impossible, but he was leading us in song. And I in that moment, I recognized how powerful that was. And likewise, when I went to the Convivium event in Arkansas with Ted, who's the best person ever. I miss Ted. Oh, Ted, please come back. He did campfires. And we were like, I was talking to Dr. Jim, and we're sitting around this campfire having a meal together, and it was so good. We had campfires every night, by the way, too. It was awesome. And that whole conference was about poetry. It was wonderful. That there are recordings of that. Check out the Golden Echo channel. Check out Father Eric's channel. His talk's on there. Golden Echo is Ted's channel. When you start to realize these modes of participation, like singing together and sitting around a campfire talking and eating a meal together, when you realize how much more powerful that is than anything we do on the internet, it's like, why don't we shut this garbage off and burn it all down and be done with it? Right. But on the other hand, and this is where it's tough for me, right? Like, all of the friends I've had the longest in my life are internet friends, every single one of them. Right. It's like every single one. There are no friends I know from my childhood from being in person with them, none. And so for me, this is really tough. And I'm still like, burn it all down. Right? Because it's a net loss. Right. And then those little cults people would go, yeah, but there's some good in it somewhere, and therefore, and oh, by the way, God can make it good. And it's like, yeah, but he can. That doesn't mean he will. You guys are confusing words here, right? He doesn't do that with everything. So how do you know he's going to do it with the? You don't know. You should shut up. You shouldn't pretend like you know something that you cannot possibly know, because you're not God. Pretty sure that's written down in that book they like so much, and they must just skip over that part or something. And that's where the problem comes in. What signals did you derive from your printed copy, which is an interpretation of a translation, which had an interpretation of the book? That's attenuation of signal right there. And without a context to hold all of that in place, I don't know, like a church with traditions and stable liturgies, it's very hard. And experts, right? Like people who like really work on that, right? It's hard to know what that stuff means. And this is why the Protestants fight all the time about theology, because it's A, that's all they have. I don't have anything else, right? And B, it's their personal interpretation. It's always their personal interpretation. When it's convenient for them, they'll say, yes, but the church said, right? And they all go like, well, we like Luther. Luther would burn your ass at the stake. He'd light the match himself. I hate to break it to you. And Calvin. And I'm like, Calvin would have you thrown in prison at the very least. The guys you're following do not agree with you at all. They don't agree with any of the things you're doing. None of them. For real. And if you knew any history, you'd know that. But you're lazy. And you don't. I don't like lazy people. I like lazy people. I don't like greedy people. And I don't like arrogant people. That pisses me off. Anyway. Sally Joe, toilet paper was fine. True. Go on, Sally Joe, you're absolutely right. Yes. Ixman, Father Eric's video on liturgy and music is good on this. Yeah. Yeah, it's weird because, and this is the problem with those little cults, right? They're just replicating little cults. Like, go off, start your own little YouTube channel. And then nobody will listen to you because even the audience that I've drawn can't pay attention to all the content that I've spawned from hell. Right. Thanks. That's really helpful. I'd rather have good quality information less often than a flood of information all the time. And that's the problem. We're in a flood. That's chaos. This is bad. It's not going to get better if you increase the flood, which is exactly what PVK is doing. And I know I'm not a fan. I don't think throwing people into the deep end and having them start their own YouTube channels where they're effectively going to do public confession and group therapy with strangers online is a good idea. In fact, I'm quite certain it's not. because we pick up those refugees and they're really bad off. And I'm like, I'm sorry this happened to you. Hopefully we can help you. And sometimes, thank God, we can. And that's what my project's about. I don't know what everybody else is doing. I don't give two bleeps what they're all doing. We're helping people. That's what we're doing. And we're not telling them to go to church or what church to go to or what theology to believe. Not that we won't discuss Bible stories with them. Sure, why not? I don't care. Whatever, bro. But also, like, that's not the focus. The focus is on helping the person integrate with the world, connect with the world, become intimate, have a quality relationship with the things around them. Because otherwise you're stuck in domicile and you're completely effed. And you will end in nihilism. And I'm just not a fan. Because I have to live here with you in nihilism. That's not good for me. And it's not good for the people around you. And it's not good for you. And it's not good for anyone else. How do I know this? Because I have stated it tautologically that the world needs you to be better. And you need the world to be better. But you have to submit to that. And no one wants to do that in an individualistic age of gnosis, objectivist, materialist society. Like, I get that. Also, too bad. I had an incident a few months ago where basically there were 4 of us on the Discord server. And 2 of the people were saying, look, these are our dating strategies and habits. And this is just part of our generation. And I went off for 2.5 hours, literally screaming and swearing at them. That is not going to work. You cannot do that. You need to get over yourselves about your stupid generation and how it's done. It can't work that way ever. It's a basic biology fact problem. Like, people are attracted to certain things and will go away from certain other things. And that's just the way it is. And 2 weeks later, 2 of them had girlfriends. I don't know. Whatever. Anyway, Sally Joe. Mark is fine with meeting crazy people, though, thankfully. I'll even take artists, Sally. They're the worst, though. Oh, my God. It's funny to hear Sarah and Sally talk about artists because they're both artists and they both hate all other artists. You can't work with artists. I know, working with artists is so... Meanwhile, they work together fine. So it's good. It's all good. All right. Any other takers for coming on and asking about signals? And look, I mean, I did give examples, more. There's more earlier in the video. I know some people came on late because Jacob linked in, which I'm very grateful for. Thank you, Jacob. It's good to see you as always. But yeah, go back and watch the whole thing because I really did go through this pretty carefully, I think. And if I didn't, leave me comments and let me know what I can improve and all that, because I'll try. I mean, maybe I can't do it because I can't do everything. There's lots of stuff I can't do, but I'm happy to get feedback and try, right? In the meantime, if no one's going to hop in, then I'm going to shut it down. Where are we at? 3 hours? Lightweight stream. That's okay. But I'll give you all a few minutes to decide. It's hard to do long streams by yourself because they're tiring. It's easier to go, 8.5 hours or whatever with Clerical. I think that was one of my 8-hour streams. That was pretty funny. That was early on. That's also on Jacob's channel, I think. I think it's still there. That was early when I had his StreamYard. Now we have Father Eric's StreamYard, so we don't need to worry about it. All right. Well, the fact that no one's joining is a signal to me to shut this down. So look, think about signals. We had a great saying that Matthew from Awakening from Meaning Crisis Discord used to say, curate your signal, right? And that's incoming signals and outgoing signals. Like, be careful what you do, right? It's funny. It's one of the things people with children learn. Boy, the children are paying an awful lot of attention to my language and what I do. Yeah. And they're copying it. Yeah. Guess who else does that? Adults. They just don't admit it as readily. They also have adult patterns from their parents that they follow. So you got to be careful of that. You got to kind of look at that and know that, and that can help you, right? For sure. But like, don't do this alone. Oh my goodness. Watch Navigating Patterns. It'll help you discern these things. That's the goal anyway. Have a good week, everybody. I don't know what the topic will be next week, but I will try again next Friday. Yeah, we don't have anything planned. I think we're good. There will be some disruption potentially later, but not this month. I think we're clear for February here. Take care, be better, create your signals, and I'll talk to you later. Be better. Be better to each other. Be better to yourself. And 12 Rules for Life, 6 weeks book club coming soon. That's all I'm going to say about that.